And we're live. All right, cool.
We are live. We're good.
We're live. We're going. Yep.
Can I light my cigar now? I'd like to light my cigar now.
You can.
Yeah, feel free.
Perfectly
now we're good. Welcome, everyone.
Episode 81?
81.
Wow.
Welcome back, Jake Sanders, by the way.
I'm excited to be back. It's awesome. Hello, everyone. Eric. Second time, right?
Second time.
All right. And as Steve gets to sharing on the podcast, we encourage you all to do the same. Happy Thirsty Thursday. We're changing it for the time being per my work schedule, but we'll get back to the Whiskey Wednesdays hopefully in the near future.
That's the goal. That's the goal. But, I mean, it's good. We're going to try something different, so hopefully people are free on Thursdays. I think this will be nice. It'll be a nice change of pace for some people.
Yeah. And we still keep the craze going with the saying, right, with Thirsty Thursday.
I still like Whiskey Wednesday better. Not just Wednesday, but just... We've been using that before we even started doing this. So, yeah, absolutely.
It started it off. So we encourage you to like and share the podcast. That's how we grow this thing. And please leave a 5-star review on our Facebook page. And if you are finding yourself wanting to listen to it in the car, you can do it as well with all your podcasting apps that you enjoy. iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, all those good ones that you like. So please like those as well. And feel free to share it and like it and all that stuff.
If you're on Facebook Live or if you have someone that's out there that actually wants to also listen on another app that we don't necessarily know about, I mean, there's Stitcher? There's several others that we can always try to publish to if it's not already showing up. But just let us know if there's something we need to share this to as far as every Friday. So tomorrow we'll go live on that, all that stuff.
Yeah. And first off, I want to thank Steve for holding down the fort the last few weeks. It's definitely been a hectic few weeks with the new job and so on and so forth, but it's awesome to see it from another light, too, and seeing it on the other side. So,
how's that going so far?
It's good.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's good.
Third shift.
Yep. So
how is it? Alicia, do you want to get... Alicia's in the audience tonight. I mean, do we want to get her a microphone?
Is this the first time you've been here, babe?
No. Over the years? My house or...
3? Yeah.
Episodes.
This is the first time at the new house, though, on the podcast, no?
I think on the podcast, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Glad we sorted that out.
She doesn't need a mic, though. Don't give her that option.
So, Dustin, I want to say also, that's a good time to bring this up here before we go live on the audio only. But Dustin Bovey is going to be doing the producer side from where Nate Hale was like kind of taking that pioneering step with the audio side. So just kind of comment on the feed if the sound is good, bad, if we need to change something so that he can watch that and change it up. So, yeah, he's going to definitely – he's also looking at this from a different angle. So that's good. And Nate had to work at the Tinderbox, had to hold down that fort, so we appreciate him. Hopefully he's listening tonight.
I have noticed before we get started that it's really hard starting something when you all work at the same place.
Yeah.
Because when things come about and things need to get done.
Well, in all fairness, Todd at the shop had a fantasy football draft, so
Ooh.
That's
Damn.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Mentioned I cared.
What's that?
Have I mentioned I cared?
No. No.
Damn.
But yeah, go ahead if you would kind of mention our sponsors to the Facebook Live while I share this, and then we'll have to go over that one more time.
Cool. Alrighty. Thank you.
Welcome our guest, too.
Yes. So are we? We're not on the audio, though, right?
Not on the audio yet.
Right.
But he's just kind of sitting there in a bright T-shirt.
I know.
That's
actually
Eric. It's a BS.
He can wear
T-shirt.
it now.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, that's topical. That I can wear this
Mm-hmm.
now because I couldn't.
I know.
Yeah.
Because that's about
Nobody
Alicia's
else can.
size now because they shrank like 4 sizes when you put them in the washer.
Are you calling me effeminate?
No, I'm
Okay.
not. We're at 2019, bud. Anyways, so thank you to our sponsors. Graciously, Altadis USA, thank you for providing the Monte Cristo Nicaraguan series this evening. Great cigar. Thank you, Tinderbox at Easton, our long sponsor. Brian, thank you very much. And thank you, BS Cigar Company. Brian and Steve, you make an amazing product, and we can't wait to hear and see the new golds to come about. The silvers are still around, and we still love those too. So, and getting into our topic this evening, we'll be talking about self-image along with our guest, Eric Goldhaber.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Eric.
Second time, right?
Second, yes.
Second time. And the first time was with
Brandon.
With Brandon.
About
believe the
education.
Yeah,
It was great.
education. I got roped into it last second. I was going to do the Bovie seat, and you're like, you know what? No, come on in.
Yeah.
So jumped in
You're
last
getting in.
second.
Yeah.
All right.
Before
Absolutely.
video.
Ready?
Yep. All right, we got about 20 people watching, so let's roll.
Happy Thirsty Thursday.
There it is.
There it is. Not Whiskey Wednesday tonight. Thirsty Thursday, everyone. This is the Bourbon and BS podcast. I'm Jake Sanders. I'm back along with Steve Crane. Thank you for holding it down, Steve. I appreciate it very, very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for keeping it going. And this is the Bourbon and BS podcast, and we are accompanied tonight by Eric Goldhaber for the second time.
Hi, still Eric.
Yes. But we're on audio now, not just live.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight, and we hope that you enjoy episode 81. We're going to be discussing self-image. Think about that while we're getting into the whiskey and cigars, but think about that, and we're going to dive into that a little later. But if this is your first time tuning in, we talk about whiskey, we talk about cigars, we talk about life. So what's
That's
up,
right.
Steve?
Welcome. Well, first of all, welcome back, Jake. So, for anyone out in the audience on Facebook Live, you guys are not imagining anything. We switched over to Thursday so that Jake could be front and center to be back on the podcast, bring all the bourbon knowledge, all the life knowledge,
Thanks.
and the cigar knowledge as well. So, and I want to thank Eric Goldhaber for coming on. We had this plan for a little while. He was very flexible to be able to switch from Wednesday to Thursday because, as he says, he has no life, which we appreciate that aspect as well.
Yes.
And he's not lying either.
No.
He's like, what time? When do you need me to work at the shop? When you want to do anything? Like,
You guys
and it
wanna
comes
come over
across
later?
like, hey, I'm at your house. We were hanging out tonight, right? No?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You're busy. Cool. All right, me too. I got to go.
I had this whole spiel in like an introduction where it was like,
For him?
yeah, gun
Oh,
enthusiast,
sorry.
like
Jesus.
political, not activist, like
Right,
Not
right.
activist.
Jew,
No, definitely not activist.
like.
All right.
Wow.
I mean, you are
Jewish.
Are you calling me cheap? Or?
See, it's so funny when you say Jew because it's just got like a negative connotation to
Louis
it.
C.K. had a bit that
I know, it
that
was great.
Jew is
It was
only
amazing.
offensive depending on how much stank you put on the word. There's Jews and there's Jews.
Current reputation on Louis C.K. is obviously very offensive
It's
also.
amazing.
So,
It's so amazing.
yeah.
So if this is your first time tuning in, we appreciate you tuning in. Please please share, and leave us a 5-star review. And we are on all of your podcast listening devices, Facebook Live, and everything across the spectrum right now. And if there's something that you don't see us on, please let us know, and we will try our best to get on there. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what's going on, Steve? I know that,
What's going on?
I mean, the past 3 weeks we've had AJ and Angelo back on.
Yeah.
I'm really upset about last week. Last week seemed awesome.
We had a great week last week, and I appreciate Rob Wilson coming on from Rocky Patel Cigars, and then United, or it's shoot, still can't get it right because Rob got in my head about it. I know what the wrong abbreviation is,
Yeah.
but it is UCD. UCD. We had Ryan Gallimore on, so those guys, we had a great conversation. It did go a little longer. We were about 2.5 hours, I believe, on at least the video.
How about this
possibly the
beautiful
audio.
ashtray, man?
Got a nice gift from Rob Wilson.
And it's freaking purple. That's
by
why I
way.
love that.
It's definitely a Rocky Patel ashtray, and it's beautiful. So appreciate that gift, and go back and listen to episode 80 because it was some great conversation, and I really appreciate it. I learned a lot from those guys as well. So we really enjoyed that conversation.
And what am I pouring right now, Steve?
So you are pouring Tom's Foolery. It is a special pick from the Cleveland Bourbon Co-op, and this is it was kind of cool because we had Eric Black, who's a longtime listener, on here, and I'm not getting my comments, so I don't know if that's there's 27 comments and I'm not seeing them. Anyways,
I had a
we'll
problem
try
with
to
that
figure
last
this
week,
out.
too. Facebook changing shit again.
Yeah, again. But Eric Black, who's a longtime listener, he went to Tom's Foolery with some of the guys from this group, and he was kind enough on his way back from vacation to bring those this bottle and another one, actually. So we have another Tom's Foolery barrel pick, and it is something that we tried. He came by the shop yesterday, family vacation. He had to go back to work today, so we really appreciate it. So, Eric, if you are out there right now, we're trying to get our comments to be broadcasting here, but we do appreciate all of that.
Yeah, I just switched mine. That's all.
Because now you can't watch it on.
Yeah,
cool.
Anyways,
he is on. He likes something, so I assume he's on. Oh, there you. Oh, no, it's not him. Anyways, but yeah, that's what we're drinking. So what's our first one here that you kind of go into that? We're also, I want to say before we get into that any further, I'm sorry to kind of talk about Alec Bradley, Fine and Rare. We're going to go over that tonight. And thank you, Eric Goldhaber, for that gift. So tonight is a whole round of gifts from people, and we appreciate every little bit of it.
Yes, thank you very, very much. So, like Steve said, Tom Foolery Distillery, coming out of northeastern Ohio. Again, Eric Black and Cleveland Bourbon Co-op for allowing us to have these barrels. So we have 2 tonight. And these are pot-stilled whiskeys. So they're pot-distilled, which means that there's 2 types of distillation. There's column still that is most commonly used, and then there's pot still, which is more of a traditional style of distilling. A lot of people say that pot-distilled, you get a lot of flavors, a lot more congeners out of the whiskey and stuff like that. So it's definitely interesting. The first one that we have is actually what the Cleveland Bourbon Co-op and Eric Black named That's the Fact Jack. It's part of their Apple Jack brandy. So it's actually not a whiskey. It's a 100% apple distillate, which means it's a brandy, so it's made of a fruit, not a grain. A little bit of background story. It's a husband and wife operation up in Tom Foolery Distillery. Husband Tom and wife Leanne Herbruck. I hope that I'm pronouncing that the right way. So they got how they first started was in 2011, and they started by getting a pot still from Michter's, which Michter's Distillery, which a lot of people, Michter's, however you want to say it.
Mixtures.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of different things, anyways. But it's kind of a cool background on them is the fact that they started with that, and they grow their own grain, they grow their own fruit, but they also paid tribute to their own farmers, where they buy grain and fruit from their farmers as well up in northeastern Ohio. So it's really just an apple brandy. It's 100% apple brandy that is 7 years old, so it was aged in an oak cask like a whiskey would be.
But it's 100% apples.
100% apples.
That's the only part of the ingredient list.
Well, that's not entirely true because it was still put in a used cask.
Right.
So it is still absorbing.
But actually what you put in the barrel, I get what you're saying.
Okay,
what you put in the barrel is just all apple.
No, virgin cask.
It's virgin.
Yeah.
It is.
Like
you said it was used.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
No,
I
no.
apologize.
But that's where you're getting those flavors out still, right? Like Eric doesn't drink people, but his palate is incredible.
It's because of so
No,
many
his
different
nose.
years. Well, when
His schnoz.
my last job in Manhattan, it was a tech company that did stuff for high-end and fine dining. So the whole shtick was when we brought customers in, we had some absolutely ridiculous $10,000 espresso machine, and one of our clients sent in super rare coffee beans once a week from different countries, different fields, different regions, and they would put up on the whiteboard, this country, these notes. So once a week, I was forced to try a whole bunch of different stuff. Not forced. I loved it. I loved it all. But they really said, here's what it is. Here's the country. Look for these notes.
Right.
And as you can probably assume, liquid's way easier to learn things from than actually, just smelling or whatever.
Yeah.
But the coffee was a lot stronger than the alcohol. So because of that, I don't know why. It applies to cigars. It applies to wines. It applies to regular drip coffee.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I know you two know this, Jake's always handed me random glasses of whiskey and said, hey, what do you get off this?
What do you smell out of it?
Yeah,
You're right, absolutely.
Because I don't drink, because I've never tried anything, I don't get to have the on the tongue. I don't get to have the follow through. All I have is what I get off the nose, and then he yells at me because I inadvertently guess whatever it was that they had written on the bottle.
No, I think it's very...
He's really...
It's a good talent.
Really good at it.
And it's something that you train yourself a little bit on. You know what I mean? That's just like anything else. You have to do that.
Well, and what I like about Eric's palate, too, is the fact that... So if
hang on, I'm sorry. I got it.
Right.
So there's a couple things. I'm sorry. This is too much because while I was trying to find the comments, I'm kind of scanning through here. Rich Backs here.
Oh, I saw
what are you spitting into the cup? And we didn't answer that. So, and then it goes down to Rich Backs again saying, seriously, what is Eric spitting into the cup? So, Eric, do you want to kind of handle that?
Absolutely, I can handle that. And it's personal, but it's not embarrassing to me. I
Right.
can imagine other people caring. It's the same problem whenever I go to the dentist. For some reason, I salivate like crazy. And it either goes down or it comes out. And when it goes down, it accumulates.
When you say goes down,
Well, Steve, when you swallow things, where do they go?
you tell me. Anyways, I also want to, and Jake, get back. I'm sorry, but Michael again from Australia. So right now we are international, which I appreciate.
Nice.
I assume Michael is on his lunch break again, and we appreciate you tuning in and sharing that and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah, around the world, baby.
But so what I like about Eric's palate is the fact that it also helps me train my palate a little more, because if I can't find something, we talk about on the podcast a lot, is that when you're trying something, you may get something out of it, but if someone else says something that you haven't figured out yet, your mind kind of goes that way and you can sort of find it. So Eric,
it's training your palate. Yeah,
like our relationship is kind of like that when it comes to stuff like this. So it's awesome. But with this apple brandy, and might I add, it's 120 proof, right?
Okay.
So, and it's a 7-year-old. It's aged in oak casks. 7-year-old, 120 proof. And even Eric, at the very beginning when we started this, he was having trouble finding like anything else but apple. I mean, it really is a heavy apple finish, but it's actually really, really, really good. Smooth for 120 proof.
It is, and I don't know if it's because I'm smoking this cigar with it, but I mean, I wish I would have tried it before I started smoking, I guess, because when I'm sipping on it, I get a lot of apple, clearly, but it doesn't taste real fruity in a sense that it's like kind of like citrusy sweet, like overpowering. It's in the ballpark of what I would imagine a strong apple flavored whiskey or something, you know what I mean? Like it's really pleasant, easy to drink. And what's the proof of this?
120.9.
So maybe that's the heat, you know what I mean? It doesn't just taste like apple juice. I don't know. It's just
and they're keeping like all the congeners and all the characteristics of the oak in there. They're not like watering it down, like they're keeping it at barrel proof, and it's really amazing with it being, I mean, there are some citrus notes in there, but I can't really pick them out, and I know Eric was trying to pick them out too.
Apple.
So, I mean, yeah.
Fucking apple. Kevin Salamone says 120 proof. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
120.8, Eric says. Eric
it
Black,
is 8.
who,
There was a smudge on the bottle, Eric. I'm sorry.
I got excited, clammy hands there. That happens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what were the interesting notes that you were picking out of it, Eric? Let's see the palette here.
So the first thing that comes to mind, and I always have to try to overlook this because it's the first thing that my nose goes to, and it's very misleading. The very first thing I go to is some type of grape, and obviously there's not a whole lot of different type of grape.
Saying, is that what you look for? Or is that what you're saying? Just naturally, that's.
I think I can't say with absolute certainty, but it feels to me like it's a result of having never drank that my nose immediately goes to grape with almost every whiskey.
That's interesting.
I don't know why. So what I always try to do is I try to ignore grape. I try to look past it. I try to look past all of the different parts of the flavor wheel, ignore grapes, see what I can find. And at first it was, before the podcast started, I was like almost getting angry at Jake because I couldn't figure out what it was. And my brain, it could be what I'm smelling, and it could be memories of something I've eaten that I was associating with it.
Yeah.
And the first things that came to mind were like a younger cantaloupe that was still really sweet, because a younger cantaloupe, unlike grapes, aren't going to have a bite to them.
Yeah.
And the cantaloupe is going to be easy, whereas the grape can be sharp. It can be a little too sour. It did smell like a regular sweetness rather than a sour sweetness.
Sure.
It didn't smell tart, which is a concern whenever you're eating these things. The other thing...
And Dustin, our producer, says, can you actually pull your mic, angle it up a little bit, get after it. There you go.
Is that better, buddy?
Oh, perfect. Don't be shy now.
I'm trying not to be.
No, I agree.
But
You're rarely shy.
But at the end of the day, there are so many different kinds of apples. I wouldn't want to say that it's this type of apple or that type of apple. It comes down to what it tastes, what it smells to me like would be the equivalent of fresh, cold green grapes. And
this does.
This particular
still has it.
Unfortunately, I can't get past the grape thing. Normally I can, and I can find something else, which is why I was upset that it almost smelled one-dimensional.
But it does kind of have that, you know, like when you try, like it isn't white grape like a flavor almost.
Oh,
like,
for sure, absolutely.
So that's what it on the back end. That's what it smells like on the nose.
And it was
It's
almost
a white grape.
and that's really easy to compare to a really mild caramel.
You think?
Yeah, because the caramel is going to have some darkness to it. So
Yeah.
that's why I was thinking more of a mild thing. But when you told me it was 120 proof and that there was no corn and
Yeah.
it was 100% apple, that makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah.
So did you read this bottle, Eric?
Not at all. No.
So the nose that this is the group here, and Eric Black's still on. He's like ready to taste these notes. I mean, that's definitely where you're at. But the nose that they have is sweet golden apples and clover honey.
I don't even know what clover honey is.
Clover honey, I don't either. But it's obviously some sort of honey. So I wonder if it's kind of softening that apple sweetness and giving it some other type of sweetness.
I think they're
Alicia
going
looks at
after
us
the
like we're
sweetness.
stupid because we don't know what clover honey is. Once again, Alicia, anytime that you want to be on the podcast, we'd love to have you on. You want to
She's
get over to that
a
producer
half
mic.
dietitian, so she knows food.
Is
What's
clover-
half dietitian mean? Like,
She doesn't have a certification.
I mean, so certification is 50% of the knowledge.
Yes,
we're
that's
going
what
to give you
I'm
this
gonna-
paper when you
yes.
pass this test. That's anything in life. I love that. It's like you're halfway there. You're like, no, I fucking did everything. It's like, yeah, but you don't have this. You know,
Yeah, exactly. You got to pay money. It's like anything
well, there
else.
you go.
And so Eric Black said that there was only 55 bottles of this.
Wow.
So again, thank you so much for the gift. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So he is a
55.
Yeah.
Wow.
very, very gracious person.
Yeah, probably
that's amazing.
out of like the yield that. Well,
All
I
right.
don't know.
Since Alicia's not helping out, Rich says honey made from bees that feed or fed on clover. Is that it? How is that like an obvious answer? I feel like that's not no.
Wouldn't come to mind.
Yeah. The rest of the studio audience is looking like I don't
like
know.
organic honey.
Is it like a Trader Joe's
Is that
thing?
what we're
I don't-
going
it doesn't
after?
have to-
Organic
No, that they fed on clover.
honey.
Yeah,
If it's-
they can't. Hear
They
you.
wanted to
can't hear
sound. Eric wanted to sound more educational.
I like
here.
it. I don't have
me.
a contrast to basically say what
Clover
regular honey is that what we're is it regular honey versus clover honey?
I really do like how distinctive they
Except,
went with
like-
this stuff.
like
Though.
beef fed bees, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
God.
Like yeah, that's a good old
Grass-fed.
grass fed beef fed honey.
Here's what I really like
You're
about
like I'm
this.
not even
Here-
entertaining that.
yeah.
I like that.
Here's what I really like about this is because of the sweetness, the fact that even though that it is 120 proof, the oak finish behind it is still very. It's there. It's present.
Yeah.
But it's not faint. Like it's and it doesn't. It lingers, but it also goes away
Yeah.
within like 5 seconds.
So I have a question about that. When it comes to whiskey, is it the same thing with cigars? With cigars, everybody is notorious for saying earthy notes. Is it the same thing with whiskey? Do you try to avoid talking about the oakiness and get past the oakiness? Because most
I
of
don't
them
know. You
taste
have to
like
include
oak.
it. I think.
I don't.
No?
I feel like you include it because I mean
You have
that's
to.
part of it. You know what I mean? Like corn is the same way with bourbons. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like you're gonna have those characteristics. Earthy is not the same in my opinion as oak. I get where you're going with it because tobacco being grown
in the earth,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it. It's like it tastes like a plant.
Well,
It's,
matter of
it's
fact.
planty. I also like the fact that like we've got this.
My dad.
Not your dad, John
was pretty
Bradley.
funny.
We got Rich. Like everyone is a honey expert or a bee expert, which is amazing. I had no idea we had the depth of knowledge out there
Next
in
topic,
our
honey.
audience. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then Eric says like the Applejack, like even though it's not a whiskey,
it's an apple brandy.
It's an apple brandy,
Yeah.
but I see where you're going because you're still getting the flavors out of the oak itself. So even though like it is an apple brandy, like we got to think like at least 75% of flavors in whiskey come from the barrel. Actually, I think it's 90% around that range.
And isn't it
So-
interesting that oakiness is
And
so...
I don't get. I mean,
What?
I don't get that. You said like 90% of the overall flavor of most whiskeys
Yeah.
comes from the barrel.
Yes.
well extracted from the wood?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but
Yes.
that's crazy.
Yes.
That's I don't know. That
Isn't that
blows
the
my
reason that
mind.
Scotch
It's
because-
crazy,
exists?
isn't it?
Well, it's crazy that they say that because I feel like a lot of it's going to come from what's in the barrel also, like the mash bill, right? Because that influences.
Yeah, it still changes
overall
it.
flavor, okay.
Yeah, it still changes it, but you got to think like if something's like that's why it goes from clear to brown. So
understood completely.
I mean,
I get the interaction from that. Yeah,
that's why like a lot of distilleries, like it really, really matters.
Wait a second. Are you saying that if you were to make whiskey and not leave it in
it's
an
white,
oak
it's clear,
barrel,
yeah.
it would stay clear?
I hate you.
No, it's a genuine question.
No,
it's actually
is
a
that
good
true?
question.
Is
Yeah.
that true?
That is true.
It is true.
They're
Yes.
doing it in
It'll
the
stay
stills,
clear.
right? So I
Yes.
mean, you're basically burning off a lot of that. Is that right? I mean, yeah. So you burn off a lot of the color, if you will, from that through the distilling process.
Yeah, sure.
You then put it in the barrels, which then gives it that similar. I mean, obviously the grains that are going into it aren't clear when you first do that.
Correct me
It's
if
through
I'm
the
wrong,
distilling
but if-
process. And Jake,
Yeah.
If you take whiskey out of a barrel, does it start off with the coloration that it has, or does it gain that coloration over years outside of the barrel?
Say that again.
If you were to take whiskey out of the barrel
Yeah.
that it was set in,
Yeah.
will it come out the color that we're purchasing it in, or does it get darker as the years go by?
No. So it only gets the color mostly from the wood itself. So like so think about it this way. So a distillate itself is vapor, and then it becomes liquid again.
All right.
So it goes in as a liquid, basically vaporize into a vapor, and then comes down to a liquid again. So when most distilleries and bourbons, just because that's my knowledge, but go into bourbons. Most bourbons are double distilled, so they come in a low wine. If you go to any distillery, they have a low wine tank and a high wine tank, so they're distilled twice. So the first time that they're distilled, they go in as a low wine, so they're a little bit more pure, and then the second time they go in and they come out and they're all pure. So it's depending on what the proof is, what they're wanting the proof, they'll put water in it or not. But then it's a high wine and it's 100% pure alcohol. Not pure alcohol, but...
I have a very remedial question about what you just said that I've heard about other alcohols, and maybe you can speak to this, maybe you can't.
Yeah.
With vodkas, for example, they pride themselves on how many times something is distilled.
Yeah.
Correct.
When it comes to bourbon specifically,
Yeah.
is it looked down upon to distill something more than twice? Is there a set number of times where you start losing natural elements?
I mean,
If you can...
I would like to say
what's
that...
the typical answer that?
Yeah, what's the
like
typical?
answer? Yeah,
Twice.
Twice and
for
twice.
bourbon.
Stop.
But like if you're talking about like an Irish whiskey,
I was
they're
gonna say,
triple
yeah.
distilled.
They're known
And
for being
Scottish.
triple distilled. Scotch is
Normally
not
double or three times, sometimes even more.
But Irish whiskey is typically well known for being triple distilled.
Yep. And that's where the pot stills came from.
Right.
Now,
That's the history.
That's
Can
the
you
history.
say, is there a connection between the number of times something's distilled and anything at all surrounding what you would perceive to be quality?
I mean, I think
Open-ended question. I mean,
No, yeah, go ahead, Jake.
for me, I think with bourbon and American whiskeys, even Irish whiskey, Irish whiskey, they're wanting it to be smoother. That's like what I think that's their overall grasp on this concept. So that their idea is that they're going to distill it however many times that they need to have the flavor, but also make it as pure as possible.
So I'm interested because I mean we've got obviously people out here that are watching. I think some for the first time, but when you're talking about some of the and it's not a talking down point, but like the basics of bourbon. What we haven't introduced too is that bourbon in general is virgin oak, right? So
Yes.
it's never
Fired.
been used right.
Fired virgin oak.
Right. Now, all these other ones we're talking about, Scotch, Irish, they are used bourbon barrels. So, that might actually influence the fact that they can get, even doing the triple distilled and everything else, you can get some of these flavors, but I think Irish whiskeys, especially the younger ones, are a little bit lighter, but they're very clean. Very
Right.
clean finish.
Right.
So they don't have so with some of the whiskey, so we're drinking Tom's Foolery, and we were talking to Eric about that. And
I'm going to move into the rye while you're talking.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the cigar maybe, and then bounce back to that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
But when you have that, going into the when I say clean finish, some of the Tom's Foolery, one of the things we were asking Eric, because I haven't had the everyday, readily available Tom's Foolery.
I had once.
It's an Ohio distillery, which we've talked about on the podcast before. There's nothing wrong with it, but a lot of them are using smaller barrels. They're doing different processes that are accelerating the process. And I don't know what Tom's Foolery does with the aging, correct? And so when you're doing that, I typically will get more of a mineral almost like some of that
metallic-y,
copper from the
yeah.
copper stills.
Yeah.
It's like they don't let it go away through the aging process type thing, through the different things. So that's what I'm kind of like bringing it all together. And then, Jake, you can kind of go on, but I kind of bring that all together when you're talking about the Irish being, in these used barrels.
Yeah.
You've got some of the characteristics. It's not just from the charring; it's literally from something else being in there.
Yeah.
That they have to select. It's not just going to take any barrels, but for certain products, they're going to have some sort of consistency. They have these arrangements with American distilleries that you're going to have that where they're going to, for this whiskey in Ireland, they're going to want the same kind of barrels. What were you making out of it? They're not just going to take a crapshoot and then just kind of take it by happen chance.
Well, that's why Jameson, for instance, we're talking about an Irish whiskey. That's why Jameson has a contract with Jack Daniels.
Yeah. So you want that line.
Yeah, but you got to think about that too. So like you're talking about like a charcoal filtered, which even though it's after the process itself, like you're still getting basically a bourbon and taking it and it's already used. But Jameson don't really fire again.
Correct.
Now there are some Irish and Scottish whiskeys that fire the barrels a second time after they've been used. Now what that does is it opens up the wood. It allows these flavors to come out again a second time. So you're allowing, I would
like
think,
reopening a wound almost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we have Willie Dines, and excuse me if I said that wrong, but he's starting to chime in here, which I love. And then all of a sudden, like he's talking about this other cigars that we guy that we need to hook up with, and then all of a sudden he says, where is it? Where is this here? Oh, Bushmills whiskey is typically triple distilled, and the distillery is only 80 miles from me here in Northern Ireland. So
yeah, it's awesome.
There's another country we're in right now, so thank you very much, Willie, for tuning in. Now we have an Irish whiskey expert on with you while you're talking.
And then Rich Back says that Jack Daniel's services many Scotch distilleries. So like we can see that a lot of these barrels are going to Scotch distilleries, Scottish distilleries, Jameson, all over the world, and stuff like that. And
so on that note, you once told me something, and I wanted to clarify it, just to make sure that I heard you correctly. This was 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
And I wanted it's very on topic. I believe you once told me that Scotch, by definition, is a whiskey that has to have been barreled in a used, specifically bourbon barrel. Is that accurate?
That's not accurate.
Okay.
If I did tell you that, I'm sorry, that was wrong.
I wanted to get clarification because I wasn't sure I remembered.
Yeah, they don't have to, but they choose to.
Okay.
And that's kind of fueled their whole way of thinking when it comes to whiskey itself. But I think that just comes back to their history because they've been doing that for so long. You got to think like when bourbon first started, they were using used oak barrels, and the only reason why they found it is how and one of the legends is, Baptist minister Elijah Craig, what he did was use like old fish barrels, and to clean them out, he fired them. And then by the time they went from Kentucky all the way down to New Orleans, they had enough time to age, and then by the time they came out of the bottle, they were brown, or out of the barrel, they were brown.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating.
So then, over time, obviously, it became the norm to age them longer to see what would happen, and now you have, bourbons that stand the test of time.
Well, wouldn't Devil's Cut be the next conversation topic? Because
yeah, that's yeah.
Well, so let's save that for when we do that one, because that's one of the ones we haven't done. Like Jim Beam, Devil's Cut,
and then Steve's got the bonded, so that's another. We've talked about bonded before, but I could talk about this all
topical,
night.
Yeah,
I could talk about it all night.
And Eric Black, he gave us that third bottle, and I ruined the surprise. I didn't know, Eric. I'm sorry if you wanted me to surprise him on the air, but we've got we'll show this another week, but we've got another barrel pick. Not only these two, but also a barrel pick from the Cleveland Co-op. With the Old Forester single barrel.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go into a little bit what he told me, but I'm saving that until the next podcast that we do that
for the
on.
Old Forester?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
There was a cool little story about that I was sharing with the rep that we're trying to get on as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, that I was talking to you about earlier. So very cool story.
Where are we smoking this? Fine and rare?
Alec Bradley, fine and rare. Eric,
You want me to?
Yeah, tell us what you know about it. I've got some knowledge on the piece, but make sure you're talking to the microphone so everyone can absolutely hear all this knowledge.
Looks like a single barrel label.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, I hate to go off brand, but I think about the Gurkha Cellar Reserve, where they're so proud of what they've done. They put as much information about what happened before the cigar made it into a consumer hand on here. So you have things like who was rolling it, who approved it, who was the supervisor, what's the exact size. That way there's no question about what you're smoking. You know what you're smoking, whether or not you got to read the barrel or talk to a rep. Or, see, I'm thinking bourbon still.
I'm not laughing.
The box.
I'm sorry.
The box. So, fine and rare, as you guys already know, and some of you out there may already know, I'm good friends with Ryan Ponist, our territory rep from Alec Bradley.
Who's been on the show before.
Who has been on the show, I believe, several times?
Twice
for sure.
Couple times, yeah. He brought on Alec Rubin.
Which was awesome.
The last time.
Well, and I bought a box of Fine and Rare many years ago, and I didn't realize that we had the opportunity to get one last year. So in my dealings with him, he was able to secure a single box for me to come to Tinderbox and have it privately sold to me because I was so fascinated by them. The first one I remember very vividly, and it was the only cigar box at the time that I had ever seen that on the interior they put up fencing, like literally physical fencing on the inside of the box to keep all of the cigars so perfectly in place that they could not move or touch one
wooden
another.
Inserts, right?
No, they weren't inserts. They were cut out of the box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, more commonly, and I haven't looked at a Fine and Rare box, which is gorgeous, but I mean, more commonly, they'll actually have it not necessarily cut out of a single piece of wood, but you've got these inserts for figurados, torpedoes, UF13 darks have
Whereas
that.
these were fingers that were sticking up and keeping them
That's
elevated,
awesome.
not
That's
touching
awesome.
anything. So it was only touching where the paper was at the time. That's not true for this.
Correct.
This is similar, but not the same. First of all, you guys are smoking it. You've been smoking it. Let me get your opinions first.
Well, talk to us about this. This is 2018, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the makeup, or do you want me to run through that real quick?
I do not know the makeup off the top
All right,
of
so
my head.
I had to basically refresh myself because this is obviously not one that I normally smoke. I mean, this isn't readily available. Clearly, they did 2,500 boxes. They're 10-count boxes. You're talking about that zebra wood look. It's gorgeous. I'm very, very upset with Eric. He said I'm kicking myself. I didn't bring the box to show, and I said, yeah, you suck. Thanks for the gift. And so this is something that. Basically, it's cool to hear what Alan Rubin, who is Alec Bradley's founder and president, CEO, whatever his title is, but he is the man. Alec Bradley, we've gone over this before, just to kind of touch it real quickly. Alec and Bradley are the sons of Alan Rubin.
Yeah.
So we've had both of them in my garage. Bradley Rubin was in my garage previously. At the old place. I don't know, and I joke about this enough that even like last night, Cigar Coop, if you guys listen to Cigar Coop, if you guys are the cigar guys out there, Cigar Coop had them on a live feed. Was that last night I was talking to you, Jake, or the night before?
Yeah.
And I commented on there because Ryan said that we've had interviews with both of them.
Yeah.
One on the air and one off the air. I'm still surprised that any Rubin is allowed at any Tinderbox related Columbus, Ohio, Steve's Garage especially event because
now podcast event.
But so Alan Rubin basically says this is more about the creation, and I'm not quoting him because I didn't write down the quote, but it was really cool. It's more about how he brings 10 different tobaccos together to create it every year. So he basically recreates the Fine and Rare. This is not something that every year is just a different size or anything like that. It's something that he's creating. And so basically this one is called not just the Fine and Rare, it's the JRS 10 equals 86.
And it says that on the band.
Does it?
It does say that.
I didn't even look at that yet, but that's so I think that's kind of like the code of what tobaccos they're pulling together. And when they're doing the blending on this, they try so many of them that's what it brings to it.
So would you assume that this is like the 86th blend?
I don't know
that
because
they did.
So when we were blending with Eric Espinosa and Hector, so they had all these different test blends that we were going off of, and it had like basically like which wrapper they were using, which binders they were using, or double binders they were using, and then like a core. So they had the core, right? So they had code for all this. This is the same blend as what they had in 2015. I think it's a different size, but the same blend.
I like the size a lot.
Similar
2015.
size.
Similar size.
This is
It might be the
slightly
same.
bigger engage, but that's about the same.
So it's got a Honduran wrapper from the Trojes region. I apologize about my Spanglish, but that's the region of Honduras.
Trojes.
And the binder is Nicaraguan Honduran. The filler is Nicaraguan Honduran. As far as I know, that's all the information we're going to get from the Rubin family. This is a very kind of proprietary private type of a blend. The MSRP is $21.90. So you figure you're spending 24, 25 typically with normal taxes, whatever state you're in.
Well,
Eric
Steve,
got a box.
I got a box. Well, that's actually a great segue.
But it's rolled at the Rice's Cubanos factory. I did want to get all the information out there for everyone on this cigar.
The cellophane that this comes in is not sealed with a sticker because it was not intended to be thrown into a bin and sold. You're supposed to buy the box.
Is the cellophane
Typically, yeah, absolutely.
Is the cellophane like to the end of the cigar? Or is it still wrapped?
It's wrapped like it would normally be wrapped, but it's not sealed closed.
Typical
But
cello.
it's not sealed.
Yeah, but it doesn't
Okay.
have the skew on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I just love I love when they kind of when they tell everything besides not the blend but like the date that the roll date like was July 16th
Yeah.
of 22nd of 2017.
See, that's the bourbon guy and you coming out.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that's the
And then the
consumer in
release
him.
date.
I think he likes to know that they're taking pride in the
It's the
product that they're putting
mindset,
out.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
They do the same thing with the Monte Cristo Epic. They
What's
won't
the
put out a
clarity?
box without a big little insert saying, these were all the people involved, and they're putting their name on it saying, you're going to like this, and here's all the people to blame if you don't.
Well, it allows you to appreciate a little more.
I mean, you don't know these people, right?
For me, it allows me to appreciate a little more.
Well, and then you also said, like, what name did you expect to see on here? There was a name I didn't know. It started with an R for underneath approved by. Obviously, Alan was on here.
So it says Raphael, but I think that's Ralph. So when you talk to the Rubens about it, like we're working with Alec Bradley on some blends for BS, and so when they're talking about it, they refer to Ralph. I assume that's Raphael.
Well, and that's to Jake's
So
point.
he's like the main blender, especially at the Rice's Cubanos factory, and then also I think he works with Rice's Cubanos and then the Plasencia family as well, both in Honduras and Nicaragua.
Well, and to Jake's point, he put his name on this, and you knew that name already.
Dude,
So
I've got the roller, the two rollers. So there's a team of rollers. You got the supervisor, you got the roll date, and that's a weekly roll date, and then the release date is over a year later. So these, it's the steps that you're getting at. Who said it? I think it was Willie said, that's Opus money. No, I'm sorry, that's Rich said that's Opus money. I mean, you're doing the same process. So not only are you like creating something that's going to be rare release, but you're also letting the actual cigar sit for over a year before shipping it out.
Well, and for these were two, pretty much.
Well, yes, but from the manufacturer's standpoint, you're only doing a year.
Yeah.
From Eric Goldhaber's standpoint, you're
So
you're
is
going
this
2
weekly
years.
production like 683? Is that the box number?
683.
Is
I
this
assume that's 683 cigars.
per week.
Weekly production.
Okay.
Yeah, I assume.
It'd be cool to see if like your box has like a number on it.
It does actually.
It
I pulled
does.
the picture if you want to see it.
Yeah, that'd be
I just sent
awesome.
it to Steve right before I came over here.
I think that at what is it? It's 6. What is it? 6.5.
6.5 by 54
56.
or 56. I think
Yeah.
it's 54.
It's 56. It
So
says on
here's
the
the box.
thing.
Yeah, 56. You're right. 6.5 by 56.
Yeah.
So it's actually a pretty stout, large cigar.
I like it a lot.
Which I'm telling you, with some of these cigars, I mean, with that price being $20+, you figure. Yes, it's just like a shot of a high end whiskey where you're looking at it and you're like, all right, I can justify a bottle maybe, but if you're buying just a shot and it's $20-some, or you can. You guys are on the microphones if you want to talk onto them. I'll stop talking. Go ahead.
There was a sticker on the side of the box I was hoping I had in this photo.
I was just trying to figure out what
Well, they-
number of boxes were.
they-
Side
numbered the
conversations in front of microphones don't work well.
That's
unless you
all
turn
right.
them on.
The point being is they numbered this
Dustin,
individual
shut 'em
box.
down.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool though, but it's awesome. I like the. I love the size. This is right up my alley. It's a shame that can any shop just order these like year round or are
No. This is you have to be obviously an Alec Bradley account, and it goes to some of their higher end accounts as far as the higher volume accounts first. Now, if they're available, and we'd have to ask Ryan, we'd have to ask Alec or Bradley or Alan what they're actually doing with these. But at a certain point, if they're available, they might. But typically, they're going to sell out, and if they have some floating around, they're sitting in a stash that if you have to be in a certain level account, you know what I mean? Like you can't be like a C account for them. You have to be someone that's doing something with them. You can't. So a lot of the companies are going to be like that, right? You're not going to be able to just order Opus X but not carry any other Fuentes.
Yeah.
You're going to have to basically show them some love. You're not just going to take the hot sellers because anyone's going to be able to sell Opus. Anyone's going to be able to sell fine and rares if you put them on there. And they don't carry any other Alec Bradleys, but they know people are looking for these limited edition ones.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, I'll go ahead and buy those. And you're like, well, what about all these other like 20, 30 different blends. Yeah, no, I don't need those. I just need the ones that I know I'm going to make a shit ton of money off of.
Yeah.
Like the turnaround is easy. So they appreciate that, and I like that. I appreciate that about them.
Well, and it goes without saying, it's, in my opinion, as a Tinderbox employee, Alec Bradley's are pretty easy to sell because they don't really put out a bad cigar. So this is a great cigar, sure, but I can't say with a straight face that I dislike an Alec Bradley cigar because I don't think they've ever put out garbage.
Yeah. I'll say, though, that, I haven't smoked one of these in years, and I am really enjoying this cigar.
Yeah, me too.
The construction's top-notch. Obviously, they're going to be using their top-end rollers in the factories, and not
I like
any
how
roller.
firm it is.
It's
for like being like firm, but also it's the balance of being firm and also soft.
So what it reminds me of is a custom roll. It reminds me of what Miami rolls were when you had these smaller shops. I don't know if it still carries the clout it did, but when you're rolling something to Miami at a certain point, not decades, but years ago, I feel like you had this construction because you had top end rollers that had gotten to the United States that they were hiring in these. Like the Altadis in the Bronze factory, you got like 12 rollers or whatever it is, like a low number of rollers, and every one of them, they're not even a team of rollers. It's like they're rolling every one of them. So they have this skill set that you can roll a cigar. It's an effortless draw, but it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
And to your point, Jake, you have a firm cigar, but when you give it a little bit of pressure, it has a little bit of give.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel spongy. This is where you get to the point, in my opinion, that you can have a cigar that's $20, and okay, you do or you do not like the flavor, but you shouldn't be able to knock the construction.
Well, and
the appreciation for the tobacco being used.
To your point, not only you'll see a lot of cigars out there that will be signed by the rollers who rolled them, and that's true here too. But it's worth mentioning that this is signed next to their printed name. This band was printed with the roller's name on there because they knew that those two rollers, what are their names? Juan Carlos Artica and Wilmar Jose Valerio? Valeria?
Yeah.
Valerio?
You're the Spanish speaker, not me.
Sí, yo sé suficiente. Pero.
All right.
Speak louder.
All right.
But more importantly, they knew that these names were going to be on here. It's not like other ones where it's like you can open up the band, you can get a signature on the back and see who did this one. It's not like that. You can see on the outside beforehand. They knew these two names were going to be responsible for the construction that you're holding.
I think what they did is they had a bigger version of this. I don't think, obviously, these are handwritten. I don't think that all these guys have steady enough. I think that what they do is they have a graphic, right? And they kind of like an electronic signature. They take it, basically scan it, and then they shrink it down for the band size. But you're absolutely right. That's where they can do it once a week or whatever it is and fill in the blanks. They have to sign it before they clock out that day, and then that's what you're using on that. So what I'd love to see is when you're looking at the weekly production being 683, you've got 25 10-count boxes, so you're at 25,000 cigars. I would love to see just how you see a roll date of July 16th to the 22nd. What was the 22nd week? You know what I mean? Like the next week.
Yeah. We won't know.
Like, do we have those bands? I assume we have those bands, much like individually numbered bands that Padron does, which I love. I love that intricate detail.
It's
and
unique.
I think that's what Jake's looking at too when he looks at the bottles, like the handwritten labels and stuff like that. I love that part of it.
Yeah, I do too, and especially like when you see the numbers on the bottles and like which bottle it is out of the barrel and blah blah blah. But with this cigar, I love talk about the notes for a second.
Yeah,
I love the fact that it's. Would you say that this is like? I don't even I'd say straight medium, maybe even mild to medium.
Strength so far, I would say medium.
Yeah.
That's true for most Alec Bradley, actually. Alec Bradley doesn't like to deviate down into too many mild.
They go full.
Sometimes.
They have some mild. We don't sell them a whole lot at our shop because they don't sell at our shop. And typically it's going to be like the lower-end ones as far as price point. Not lower-end quality, but like the American Blend and stuff like that.
And
We've got some. The Medalist, yeah.
But the creamy cedar notes that I'm getting out of this, this is right up my alley. I think that it's not full bodied, but it's just got a lot of flavor to it,
which is cool because usually you have to have a full body or a lot of heat or a lot of pepper or a lot of spice to get flavor.
And this doesn't have any spice.
They don't need to do that. They've gotten the flavor out of the blend itself.
It's just so creamy. It's got a rich,
easy,
creamy note.
It's very easy.
See, I don't get the creamy as much as I get the woods. Like the woody, like a toasted wood. You know what I mean? Like in the retro hail.
Like a lightly toasted though. It's not an aggressive.
This reminds
very,
me
very
of,
easy smoking.
like you said, Steve, like one of the farm rolls. Like this reminds me of a Cuban-esque cigar.
So yeah, I can see that.
For me,
for sure.
It is in that realm.
It's got that grassy note that it like not a bad like mineral grassy note. But
no,
like
I don't. Yeah,
like the hay that you get off of farm rolls, like a dry hay. That's
I love
awesome.
hay notes
like,
so much.
Oh, it's
I do. No, that's a sweet spot for me. Hay
What's
notes.
that?
Hay notes.
Hay notes.
It's the same reason I loved the Big Johnny and the Gran Habano Corojo No. 5.
Yeah.
I just love that hay note. It reminds me of October. It reminds me of hay rides when I was a kid.
Yeah, I get it. There's especially with you with your smells. I mean, obviously,
Sure.
what they say is that smell, the
And
sense of
this-
smell, is going to be your most tied into memory, which has the most emotional factor.
Olfactory
gets
system
better.
Yeah,
has
olfactory.
22
think it
different
gets better?
senses.
Yeah, I think it's like at the first quarter of it, I was kind of like, but then it changed 3/4 of the way down. I don't like there was a significant change in that rich note.
Well, and before I even get into notes, there's something to be said about a cigar that can carry itself through subtlety rather than through in-your-face flavor. That's when you guys came back from Cuba and you let me try some of the stuff you brought back. There was so much subtlety. There was so much ease. You smoked the cigar to relax and enjoy it rather than to pound nicotine.
Now, you talking to the branded stuff, or are you talking about like the farm rolls?
The farm rolls,
Okay.
which I'm not supposed to know about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely you do.
But
You got to know people.
but more importantly, its quality comes from within rather than topical. It's not the Kentucky Fire Cured. When you smoke a Kentucky Fire Cured, remember that cigar? It smoked.
That's your statements are taking a turn.
Well, you had the flavor right away.
It's like when you're driving down the highway and you get the rumble strip. You know what I mean? The wake your ass up type. Like, oh shit, you're veering off.
It doesn't need to do
That's
that.
what you just did to
It
me.
doesn't need to do the KFC.
I thought my
thing.
seat was going to start vibrating. Like, oh shit, what's going on?
He's saying it doesn't need.
It doesn't. It doesn't have to have a shtick. It doesn't have to have a gimmick. It speaks
No.
for itself.
Well, I think that's where I like what
It should at $21.
Yeah, right.
So first, to both those points, right? So with this, what I like about it, and I would be shocked if, like, at some point it came out, like when you look at a market, and I know the Rubin family a little bit, and I don't think they'd ever do that, but it would shock me if they're like, hey, can I tell you a secret? This is bottom of the barrel tobacco. We're just fucking with everyone. And basically, we're charging you $20 because
You'll buy it.
we'll dress it up in a fancy box. We're going to say, no, this is fine and rare. And it's like the only reason it's fine and rare because no one else wants to use tobacco. I don't think that's what we're smoking.
Bastards.
What I'm saying, though, is that when you're comparing it to some of the farm rolls, those farm rolls from Cuba, what we've learned is that's going to be the top 10% that the farmers want to keep. So it starts with the tobacco. I mean, you're basically, you got Alan Rubin and his staff, if you will. Let me finish her up here.
My bad.
Take some of the rye. You have their staff basically saying, all right, so Rice's Cubanas, whether they're buying the tobacco or if the Rubens are buying the tobacco, whoever's picking this tobacco, they're saying, we're not messing around on this one. I want to mess with some of the top premier tobacco that we're sitting on.
We're
I don't
staking
care
our
about
name
the
on
cost
this.
right now. You know what I mean? Like it'll transfer to the consumer, but it's not like the farm rolls where these guys down in Cuba are able to keep their own tobacco. So when I'm on the farm, I'm not going to say what we pay for them on the farm, but it's like you got top end tobacco that you're paying a lot less than $20-some a cigar. Now, some of the higher end cigars in the United States, whether they be or in the world, whether they be in the United States or whether they be Cuban cigars in other countries, the higher end ones, they do come with a higher price tag. You know what I mean? Because of all the tariffs and yada yada, all the steps involved, you're going to have more cost. So to have a $20-some cigar taste like this, you appreciate it. What I'm tasting in it is that I'm not trying to like blow smoke up his skirt, but the Rubin family did a nice job with this because this is something that unfortunately I'll say doesn't sell all that well for us. Other shops and other people are going to be snatching them up every year, but for us it didn't sell all that well because it's a $20 Alec Bradley.
Sure.
And that's not my necessary opinion, It's not exactly what I think, but it's like when I smoke it now, I smoked another one. I can tell you if we have them back in the shop, it's something that I would be able to sell to someone looking for something, a high-end cigar, which I think you do have to do to get it across to the consumer that they look at Alec Bradley as something that's a very we talked about it where they're in the same boat as Rocky, like we had Rob on last week, where it's something that, like, I don't want to say it's a diluted or polluted portfolio, but it's a vast portfolio.
Yeah,
for sure.
Highly.
So when you have a $4 cigar versus a $20 cigar, and all I've smoked is the $4 to $8 cigar range, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying a $20 cigar made by these people.
Came from the same field, came from the same dirt, can't be that good.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that mentality.
Exactly. That's
But that
that's
just goes to
frustrating part.
show that people, like, when we're talking about whiskey, we're talking about cigars. Like, if you have the means to do so, you should try anything that you, like, either piques your interest, and that's part of, like, the marketing, but you should at least try everything that you can, because it doesn't, or don't have the perception on something just because of one product.
So
Well, and that's what we're talking about, self-image here in just a short period of time. One of the reasons when I was looking at the kind of secondary bottle to what we have as gifts from Eric Black,
Yeah.
is I got the Jim Beam 100 bonded.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen it much.
Yeah.
You don't see it much in Ohio, in my opinion, at least the stores I go to. I don't see
Not
it
really.
just sitting on the shelves
No.
with all the other Jim Beam stuff. We talked about this previously with the Booker stuff, is that what people are known for, or what at least you know them for, doesn't mean that's all they can do.
Yeah. And it was funny, I was just telling Eric before the podcast that I remember when I was just starting with this whole whiskey thing, that when I first found the bonded, I thought I hit the jackpot.
This is the one I got.
Yeah. It was not in Ohio. You couldn't find it, and I found it in Kentucky. I was like, I've been looking for this, and I saw it everywhere, and I was like, I have to get one.
Well, I had a glass earlier, a small glass, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, compared to normal Jim Beam, I think there's some more depth there. So
Yeah.
is bonded lottery based as well, or no?
Well, what do you mean?
Do we have to only get it in certain stores, certain sellers, or
no.
is it going to be
No.
mass production?
No.
It's mass production.
It is mass
pretty
production.
much.
Okay.
now, is that bottled in bond because it's 100 proof? Is it following those standards?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And we'll get that. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
But
it is a bottled and bond. So, anyways.
Do we want to hit on notes?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What do you think
Eric?
about
What
it,
do you got?
So,
You brought them.
yeah, I brought them. There's a thing that I wanted to say that I hate to say about any cigar because right at the face it sounds bad, but it's not.
Yeah.
The first thing that I thought the first time I had this cigar was, unfortunately, at first I thought it was boring. But I'll admit, this exact cigar.
When you first lit it up?
Not today.
No,
First time I
first
had one.
time.
First time I ever had this exact
Okay.
cigar, I thought it was boring.
What did you smoke before?
Nothing. I had
Nothing.
it. I had it
Oh,
on a
okay.
clean palate intentionally because I was expecting the world out of it.
Yeah.
Now, I'll admit that was before I had a good subtle cigar. When Brandon Karst came back and he handed me a farm roll from Cuba.
When he came back last year from Cuba.
Yeah, when he came back from Cuba.
Yeah.
And then I had one of those. And I had what you said was that 10% that they held back, that they made the most important tobacco available to themselves and to the few people that they loved and trusted.
Yeah.
And I understood when subtlety had its place. I didn't realize that it wasn't like steak where it's like, here's your flavor, here you go. Instead, it was a labor of love. It was they put together something here that they felt represented the family,
Poetic.
the company. They wanted to put something together that made sense for who they are.
Yeah.
And then I started looking into it, and I thought, this isn't boring. This is unique. This is something that says, I can be important, I can be relevant, I can be quality without being, from a flavor perspective, gimmicky. I'm not trying to be the Kentucky Fire Cured. I'm not trying to throw shade on them either, where they have to have so much smokiness as soon as you smoke it. It's quality comes from within. Now, when it comes to notes, I don't think that your average smoker is going to smoke this cigar and be like, oh, man, wow, that's so many different things, because it's not for them. It is for the seasoned cigar smoker who's tired of pepper in their face and wood in their face. And they're tired of it.
Yeah.
This is almost like it's not the same thing, but it's kind of like a vodka, like where it's better to have a vodka. The less you taste, it means it's more pure, and the better it is, and the more expensive it is. So it's almost kind of like that with this cigar.
Exactly.
But there's still flavor.
There's a lot of
I
flavor.
don't want to mislead people that there's
it's not a nothing cigar.
But it's not
the less
misleading.
you taste, the better the tobacco is.
That's not the case with cigars
It's
at all.
not misleading oaky flavor.
But it's got a clean, pure...
You're not getting earth. You're not getting dirt out of it.
No, not at all.
And that was what Steve was
There's
talking
no
about
bite
earlier.
to this at all.
You're smoking a plant usually, and you get that earthy note because it was a plant grown in dirt. You're not getting that from this. You're getting the intended flavors from the correct leaves from the right part of the plant that they chose to be the most appropriate
So much cedar.
for what they were going for.
So much cedar. I love that finish.
It's really interesting because we got Willie on there still from Ireland, right, Dustin? That's the Willie that's still on there. So we've got him on here, and he's talking about how he doesn't like the large bands, and I got to agree with both sides of it. I know it's going to be very, there's a big contradiction there, right? So I appreciate it being on there and like that information as a single cigar. Mm-hmm. But to Eric's point earlier is that, this is something that you typically, you're like, all right, I can buy one, whatever, but like you kind of package it as that you're going to buy a box of 10.
Sure.
Put it inside the box like some of the other ones and minimize the band. And again, at the tinderbox at Easton, what we do is we put them in bins, so that would be lost unless we put it in a certain humidor that has the box. But looking at this, and I wish I would have seen this in a better light because we just have the lights here in the garage, but the overall presentation, the sheen on the wrapper, the oiliness on there, it reminds me of what we're talking about, some of the top-end tobacco that you don't need a gimmicky band. We're not in that market where you can do that, though, because, I'm not bringing up Rocky.
Not sure everyday smoker looks at that, though.
Well,
you want to tell me that people, when they come into the tinderbox, look at the wrapper leaf?
That's what my point. That's not the market we're in.
Yeah.
You need to have that gimmick. That box is going to stand out, right? But I mean, with this kind of band on it, when you see it in there, like, what is all that? Because
and that
when you
blue's
look at
metallic
this,
too. On the
I know,
band.
but when you look at it, like I'm holding that, if that's in the bin, no one's going to know what the hell that is.
That
they
looks
don't know it's an
normal.
Alec Bradley. They're just like, what is that? And so you have to kind of go around the band. You got to tell them about it. So even with that, it doesn't. The presentation, the image of it is confusing until you actually get into the story.
Well, it's almost like a list. Like you don't see that at all.
Right. So like I said, if we have it sitting there like this, Jake, and I've got basically the top end, so the reverse side of where the band's connected. You have no idea what that is in the case, except for the fact it's $23.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is that $23?
Well, and it's worth mentioning, that's a product of Tinderbox in our style. Any other humidor where they leave cigars in the boxes and they open up the box and you walk in, you see it on a shelf, this would jump out at you. This would be the biggest attraction in the room because, as you said earlier, that box is gorgeous. If you had boxes on the shelf, this would be the first thing customers ask about.
So it's a mentality thing. We talked about the Cuba shops, right? When I was down there, and a lot of other shops are all over, as opposed to like duty free and all that stuff. But even duty free, you're not buying single cigars.
Yeah.
You're not buying single cigars. So in the American market, and I don't know if you guys want, we can keep talking about the cigars here a bit more because it is very delicious, and I appreciate it.
Can you try that rye whiskey and then take a puff of the cigar and tell
Absolutely.
me what you think?
But my point is, what really shocked me being in this industry is that when I was down in Havana, that one of those things that they had a very small selection. So this is the opposite of what you have when you come into like a shop like Tinderbox or a walk-in humidor. That you've got these individually priced cigars. You have the box out in a walk-in humidor. It's open, and you're like, all right, so it's $16.95 a cigar. It's $8.95 is what you see on the box. In Cuba, in a lot of like the duty free, or all the duty free really, but in other countries, you have a very small selection. You have maybe a top 8 cigars that you can buy individually. If you want to buy cigars from that shop, you are buying boxes. This is how it works.
That's ridiculous.
So they are obviously a part of this where they have to do it this way, where they have to look at the box sales, but they're also looking at the fact that this market is dominated by single stick sales.
I meant to ask you only because I don't go to so many different cigar shops. I'm pretty attached to Tinderbox. When it comes to you're welcome.
And thank you for working there.
Well, I do what
Part-time.
I can. When it comes to the other cigar shops, how many of them are the bin model versus the open box model?
A vast minority.
Which are bin?
Yes.
Vast minority.
Vast minority.
Yeah.
It's all walk-ins. We have
that.
people, anyone that's not familiar with our store, we have a lot of out-of-town, out-of-country people that come in through our shop, and And I got to tell you, everyone walks in, they don't know why the doors don't open. They don't understand. It's just it's a foreign concept.
Well,
but
when people ask you, answer nicely. I say it wrong. I just say so people don't steal it.
yeah, that's not good customer service. Yeah. Because we're in the hood of Easton. They're also doing a $500 million renovation and expansion. But yeah, like
I know.
so you
I've
assholes,
worked on that.
Just don't call them assholes because you assholes don't steal it.
Well, I don't say that.
Well, that's good. I mean, you can take it down. You can take it down.
Unless they're regulars.
Regulars you can talk to differently. Absolutely. That's how you know we like you.
But no.
All right. Go ahead,
did
Eric,
you
while I
try
do
that?
this. No, yeah,
Okay.
I have.
All right,
yeah.
so let's wrap up the flavors.
That's where I'm getting to because
Yeah.
Steve needs to do that and then take a puff because that's where the magic happens here.
For sure.
Tonight.
And mine's going to be limited, so let's start with mine because it's not going to be as complete as yours.
I know.
All I could do is smell what you handed me, and it's going to sound unconventional, but the first thing that came to my mind was a sandwich. And I know
what?
A sandwich, and it's not like a sandwich
why I
taste or
like
flavor.
Eric.
It's
why I
a
like
whole
Eric.
bunch of very different, diverse things at once.
Wait.
No, just hear him.
Hey, hear me out. Hear me out.
Hear him out.
Hear me out.
Because I see where you're going,
You see
and
where
it's
I'm-
exactly what I think. It's exactly what I was going to say. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, Jake and I catch a lot of flack for
Weird notes.
our analysis of notes in anything. Whether
No, a sandwich is so unlimited. It's the toppings, it's
Yeah.
the condiments,
Yes, it
it's
is.
the
Okay, so
what kind of
Steve-
bread are you
overall-
using?
all right, so
thing.
all right,
No.
no, that's
Is
actually
a hot dog a sandwich based on what Kylie said earlier in the thread?
Yes, it is.
All right, so
yes, it is
tastes like a
because
hot dog,
sandwich is
possibly.
anything that is a combination of other
All right.
things that you deserve to have together. It is a
I
pairing.
love the use of the word deserve. You like sandwiches.
What are you trying to say?
How many sandwiches a day or a week do you? Is that like part of your?
1,000 calories a day.
He's lost a lot of weight.
I know we're gonna get into it. I'm just saying. All right, go on.
It's
I'm
Okay,
impressive.
so
teach me.
My point is, working at
Stop
Tinder,
eating.
working
That's
at
hard.
Tinderbox, we all get the question: what would you pair with this? How would you pair this with that? And yeah, not this particular. I want to go. I want to
So
drink.
you're saying with this cigar, you'd say a sandwich?
Yeah, I go to Subway and I'd smoke this.
I had Subway tonight. Maybe that's why I like it
I
so
get
much.
what you're saying. Just say it.
All right,
Get
so
to land your plane.
All right, landing the plane.
You're coming in too hot.
I feel like this cigar in particular only offers a very specific area of flavor, and I think that very specific area of flavor is underlined very well by a stark contrast that you just handed me, which would be a standout sour or a standout sweet. Because this is not sour, this is not sweet, this is subtle. And when you pair subtlety with complexity, I'm sorry, not complexity. When you pair subtlety with something that stands out as viciously as a high octane alcohol
Yeah, yeah.
would, you get a complete picture.
Now the rye is 105 proof.
And I'm firmly of the opinion that this cigar is meant to be paired with something that has that aggressive
Yeah,
alcohol content, that has that aggressive, well-distilled, well-maintained,
I agree.
complex alcohol.
so this is what I was thinking, like before you said the sandwich thing. But I like the
And then I want to
I like the
answer
enthusiasm.
you asking me to do that.
enthusiasm. So
Do what I can.
going to Eric and then answering Steve's question about it is that so I was
About the sandwich?
about the pairing
Got it.
is that I was thinking bread,
Okay?
like sourdough bread.
Sure.
And that's what I'm getting off of the pairing. It's
Which
only,
pairing?
The pairing of the rye. So our second one is from the Single Barrel Select from Cleveland Bourbon Co-op.
There you go. Yeah, nice.
Which is the Ohio Straight rye whiskey that they also did from Tom Foolery.
Yeah.
So it is a 70% rye and 30% rye malt. So they malted the rye, which is a little interesting. But so this is a 6-year from May of 2013, and it was bottled in May of 2019. And it is 105.6 proof, as it says on the bottle.
Okay.
But what I'm getting out of it is that we have those crisp baking notes that we normally get out of ryes that we know and love, like the Christmas Day, the molasses, the nutmeg, stuff like cinnamon, stuff like that. And then you're like what Eric said, you're combining that with a cedary, not abrasive, just great cigar, gentle elegance, right?
For sure.
And so what I'm getting off of it is just a bread with that baking spices. It's almost got a a cookie finish to it.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah,
On the cigar?
It's just no, both of them. Like if you, and it's not from like if you take a puff of the cigar and then have a sip. It's if you allow your senses to have the rye with all those baking spices and then mellow it out with a puff from the cigar, you get all those just elegant notes of just a not. I wouldn't say a sugar cookie, but just a plain sourdough cookie. It's great.
Now, Jake, I mean, have you retrohaled much tonight?
I have.
Okay.
And I don't get any spice off of it, that's what I like.
Not spice. No. So I can see what you're saying about that. It's interesting, though, going from the apple brandy, and then we'll kind of move on. We'll save this part of it. We don't want to have a Padilla episode. But it's interesting that, smoking that with the apple brandy, I thought that the cigar held its own more.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So switching over to the rye, and it's interesting, 120 proof, you think like higher proof, you're going to lose some of that. The 120 proof versus 105.6, I went back based on what you're asking, Jake, and going back to the cigar, it's interesting because for me, it basically it made the palate in my mouth, my tongue, a little bit more. Like there's more on that because I think the apple with the little bit of sweetness, the apple flavor was more on the tongue.
Wouldn't it stand to reason that the higher the alcohol content, the stronger that the alcohol in there, it could dissolve and open something up that was already there and dormant?
It would make sense. For me, though, I'm talking about the retrohale, which is one of the things for me. Now that retrohale went a bit silent. When I'm drinking the rye, the retrohale went away, and that might be the heat or the flavors, the overpowering flavors, not in a bad way, but
it
the
went away on the
overpowering
lower.
flavors. Yeah, it kind of it went a lot more subtle. I have to like really take a break from the rye and I want to do it, but I'm the one talking right now, so I want to do more puffs through the the retrohale through the nose and the mouth and everything else. I want to get that whole experience on its own.
Yeah,
this cigar, I don't think stands up. All those subtleties you're talking about, Eric, as far as like this is a very, very, the appreciation of the tobacco, I think goes away a little bit with the rye.
Really?
In the overall experience, for me, on my palate. I'm not saying I'm right, you guys are wrong.
Are you saying that
vice
specifically
versa.
on the retrohale?
Specifically on the retrohale, it is definitely gone away. On the palate, on the tongue, there are different, it lights up other aspects of it, but at the same time, on the retrohale, which is, I can't not retrohale on a cigar typically without forcing it, which is the opposite of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Would you say that there's a build-up aspect to it, where you have to smoke a little bit more than you're drinking to allow it to build up, to allow it to meet the strength of what you're drinking?
See, I've been talking, and I take another
perfect combination if I ever heard one.
I tell you, I just took a puff off the cigar and retrohaled it, and it came back. Now that I'm talking, that I kind of let everything kind of go quiet on the
Chill
whiskey.
For a minute.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me on this cigar is the overall experience, and I don't know. I think that's what when you it's not just the price tag. When you do a $20-some cigar, you don't want something killing the nuances. I don't. I'm not speaking for anyone else.
Fuck. Sorry.
What do you say fuck to?
My love for bourbon called for a second.
Cool. Just
ahead.
For a second, not all day. Cool.
That's natural.
Dustin, go ahead and save it, and then we'll edit this part out here. So, hit that green. So for the Facebook Live viewers, this is the point where we're going to save it. You guys, if you've been a part of it before, this is what we do. We lost an episode a while back. We're talking like a year ago, more than. So we're going to save it here.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to mention, again, our sponsors, right?
Yeah.
Altadis USA, we're basically renewing the sponsorship now. I've got another one that we have been working on that I'm communicating with. Jake is... has been in the mix as well.
Steve's contact.
Well, it's our contact. I mean, they know you. They've been on the podcast before. We're getting a lot of support, so we appreciate that. We'll be announcing that here soon. So we appreciate Altadis USA, Tinderbox at Easton. Obviously, that's how we all know each other, and this whole garage is basically affiliated is through that cigar community, which is what this podcast is about, and also the BS Cigar Company. So we appreciate that. But while we're just on Facebook Live, Eric, second time, where are we at a year or so later?
Oh man,
His opinion?
Of the podcast. I mean, we got people out there. What are you thinking?
There's so many things I'm thinking. The first and foremost, the first word that comes to mind is sincerity. I believe when I hear you guys say whatever you're saying, whatever you're feeling, I don't feel like you're saying things at me. I feel like you're sharing what you actually believe.
Conversation.
I feel that there is a note of honesty. I hate to go for the top dog. I feel like the Joe Rogan experience. I feel like you care about what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not just
and
saying.
what you're saying, I hope.
Absolutely, I do.
Okay. Sorry, I'm putting words.
But you guys do this every week, and you guys put so much of yourselves into this every week, and it consistently shows. And I'm not trying to kiss ass or anything right now. I genuinely mean that you guys are passionate, and it's not just you like it. It means something to you.
Nice.
Every single one of these things appears to me, I feel like you guys mean all the things that you say rather than talk about it for the sake of talking about it. And I feel like the production value of everything that you've done shows.
Appreciate that.
I mean it. No, it's not just a compliment. It's a statement of fact. The complexity has grown. The focus has grown. Sorry, I didn't mean to use your hashtag.
Please use it all you want. I'm going to throw a banner up that says focus.
Oh, you just get the tattoo already. We know you're going to do it.
I might.
All the way across your back.
I was going to say tramp stamp.
Or your forehead.
All right, go on.
Anyway.
So there's some value in listening to the video part.
Well, and I also hear appreciation. I don't hear hollow compliments about the things that you're smoking.
Yeah.
You're not going to say that it has something that it doesn't.
Right.
And for anyone out there that's curious about any of these things, I've had a lot of friends of mine tell me that you guys turn them on to something new.
Nice.
That you have exposed them to the existence of a manufacturer they didn't know existed. And if it's not just the fact that you care about them, you're enabling other people to care about them. You're not just trying to bridge companies together. You're bringing to the table something that actually matters to you. I've not heard you guys say, man, this thing's just garbage. Get it out of here. You guys have actually spoken to things that meant something to you, and I think that the viewers hear that.
Yeah, that's awesome, Eric Goldhaber. And thank you for being on. It's funny because we have gifts from Eric Black and we have gifts from Eric Goldhaber along with our guest, Eric Goldhaber.
Hi.
But so Eric Black just said, like on the podcast itself, I think he was answering Steve's question is, the podcast itself is kind of like reflecting on your past. Remember what your parents and elders said. Those are things that keep coming to mind when I listen to this podcast, which is awesome and great comment. And we thank you, Eric, for all your support, and it's awesome. Thank you for the gifts.
And I want to build off of that when we start, because we had a conversation. Unfortunately, you had to leave when Eric was in the shop. But Dustin, we all file saved, all that stuff, right? So we're in the same spot. All right, go ahead. So we want to say, now that we're back on the audio here, is that this is a time also that if you guys can check out the Facebook video, the YouTube video, we have a little extra content on there when we do the save in the middle of the podcast, before the podcast. Before the podcast isn't always as structured because we're just kind of getting started and everything like that. But
like the first 5 minutes.
Jake brought up, and we were asking Eric what he thought. From over, God, it was over a year ago when he was on the podcast the first time. The old garage, old setup. I don't think we were on Facebook Live at that point. So
no video.
Come a long way, and he had some feedback for us, and it was positive. And Eric Black, who was the other Eric that donated to the podcast. Jake, go ahead and read what you read from his comments.
Yeah, so Eric Black said, reflect on your past is kind of what the podcast reminds him of. Remember what your parents and elders said. Those are the things that keep coming to mind when he listens to the podcast, which is, it's quite a compliment. I mean, I think. And just real quick before you go on your thing is that I think that not enough people think about their past because there's this whole stigma about don't be in the past, like look to the future. That's how you gain things, that's how you prosper. But I think that a lot of us can learn from our past, and I think that's the most important part about it. So for Eric to say that, I assume that that's what he means. I truly love that.
It ties in great with our conversation topic.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to say real quick, Eric Black was in the shop. And what I appreciate about what he said, I was asking him after you left. I said, so what? he's been mentioning all the different podcasts he listens to that are cigar related. I said, what is it that has you keep coming back to ours? And that was part of it, is that, he was talking about, he's like, dude, I'm kind of a newbie when it comes to cigars. He's clearly a bourbon guy. I mean, like, oh my gosh.
He did these picks with Bourbon Co-op, with Cleveland Bourbon Co-op.
110% in on the whiskey side of it, and he loves that part of the conversation. But he did actually not shock me, because he does comment, during the topic portion of it. But, he's not a part of the cigar community. But when he says that quote there that you read, it was interesting, because he even said, he's like, when I'm listening to some of the topics, and I'm not quoting him, but he said along the lines of, the gist of it was, it reminds me of my past.
Yeah.
Some of the things my parents used to tell me, things I've figured out over the years, and some of the things that I don't necessarily want to relive, but then I do. And he's got kids in the teenager years, and it kind of brings him full circle.
Yeah.
That, he listens to it. He has these reflection thoughts of some of the things that we talk about, in not only the bourbon side of it, the cigar side of it, but just the conversation that you were talking to, Eric, the point you were talking to as far as between the audio and the video there. But, he was just really enjoying the fact that the reflection that he's been able to enjoy on everything, and then kind of not necessarily like regurgitate or spit back out, but then all of a sudden it frames the way that he might actually talk to his kids, might talk to people around him. The things that it's not necessarily stuff from the podcast. It's something that he actually sits back and thinks like, oh shit, like
there's other people out here that are thinking these same things, feeling these same things, sharing my way of understanding. It's
very, very neat. So tonight, we again, Eric Goldhaber, Eric on the podcast.
Hi.
Thank you for the cigar.
Hi.
I'm only halfway through it. I'm loving it. And the whiskeys, thank you, Eric Black. Now we're going to be moving on to some sippers, so we don't kill those bottles necessarily right now. But
and the Kentucky Spirit's open.
I see that. And the Jim Beam Bonded is also available if we want to float around.
I said I would bring a bottle, so I found one from the stash.
I don't want you to kill that bottle. It's another special bottle. So I've got a nice $20-some bottle that's available. So we're talking about self-image, and the obvious one, we brought on Eric Goldhaber, and one of the things that we talked to Eric about was, it's an obvious thing, and I wanted to post pictures, and I never got around to it. I know you have no shame with it, but you went through a similar late 20s past that I did, where I kind of went up in weight. So face value.
I'm in the mix now.
Well, no. All right. The thing is, when we talk about self-image, when we're talking about this topic, I want to kind of frame the conversation. The fact that it's not just your image. This is everything. So a weight gain, weight loss, all this stuff. It's not just about that. It's more or less a self-concept thing. So Eric, I want to ask you, if you will, kind of lead this into this part of it. So take the face value side of it, right? What was it that you have gone through in the last year?
So first of all, I really appreciate the way you framed it, because it isn't just a weight loss thing. It's absolutely an entire self-image thing. Let's hit the nail on the head first, and then let's digress. In my opinion, I was straight up fat. I was overweight. I was not happy with my body. So let's get that out of the way real quick. I didn't care. I ate as much as I could, as much as I wanted to. At some point in time, first of all, for reference, I'm only 6 foot tall. I don't know if that's
only 6 foot.
Hey, there's
slightly better than average.
Okay,
I wish I was that height, because I probably would have played D1 if that was the case.
At 6 foot tall, my maximum weight was 294 pounds. And I felt awful. I didn't like how I looked. I didn't like how I felt. And it was little things. It was flexibility. It was my favorite clothing wasn't fitting anymore. Most embarrassing thing, by a wide margin, was looking at mattresses that I had to throw away that were worn down on one side. I was straight up overweight.
After how many years?
Not many.
Oh, shit.
Not enough. Not enough is the answer to that question. Maybe 2 or 3.
I got you.
So I decided to change it, and I decided to lose weight, and I really like where I've come. But that is one thing. For the record, now I'm down to 187 pounds this morning.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate
Say that one more
it.
time. What was the start and finish there?
Well, so the problem is, when I was 294, it was before I started losing weight. I naturally went down to about 268 pounds. And then at 268 pounds last November, I decided it was enough. And I got to say, trying to lose weight right before Thanksgiving was not the smartest thing I've ever done from
And
a
this-
timing
tough
perspective.
time.
This was just on diet alone, though, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I am a very busy guy with a lot of different hobbies, and as a personal choice, I've chosen not to work out. There's too many things I want to do with my day. Not to knock working out in any way, because I did it before.
Yeah.
It's just not something I want to do with my time.
I like that, though, because it's a cool perspective.
It is. It's
Right?
very unique.
It is, but before you go too far past that,
What's up?
you started your weight loss at what weight?
So my actual weight loss attempt started at about 265 pounds, 264, somewhere around there.
And when was that?
That was last November.
Last November, so not quite a year.
No, not a
Right.
year.
So I'm going to introduce later in this conversation here. Where were you at before that? So you're walking around weight before all of this started building up over time. So go back 5 years.
5 years.
Did you ever weigh yourself back in your early 20s?
The shameful part is I was afraid of owning a scale.
All right, so you never did, but
But I did go to
Ballpark
I
it.
went to the doctor every 6 months, and I got my printout there for all the weights they caught me
how old
at.
are you now?
Right now I'm 30.
So at 24 years old, 25 years old. Go back 5
My
years.
age.
25.
Now.
5 years ago, 4 years ago, I was at
24.
294. 5 years ago, I was in the lower 280s.
Okay, go back to 22.
22
Because I'm looking at
years
old
old.
pictures of you when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
knew you initially, and you were
Not that bad. It wasn't as bad back then. At 22, I was probably about 220, 230-ish.
Yeah,
But
okay.
here, I didn't like the weight concept of it. The best measure I have for my physical body was the size of clothing. And,
Right.
and the biggest I got to was a 44-inch waist. Normally, I was a 40, and I flexed up to 42, 44. Today, I am kind of drowning in my 33s and my 34s.
There you go.
And I
Nice.
absolutely hate clothes shopping, so that's why I still have them, honestly.
Hell, when I was in good shape, I was 36.
Yeah, I wasn't a football player. I didn't have a good excuse. And then the other thing was T-shirt size. For the majority of everyone's knowledge of me at the cigar shop, I was a double XL. I was a 2XL.
Really?
Yeah, for real. And most of my clothing.
See, after the podcast, I'm going to bring up some pictures that you had like as a profile pic for a long, long time, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, we should update that.
That was the best part about it. This is what I wanted to bring onto this, the self-image aspect,
Yeah.
not so much the weight aspect. My self-image was so poor that I bought clothes and I wore clothes and I dressed myself in a way that hid what I knew to be true underneath.
Interesting.
I was the master at hiding how
It's a bold statement.
not attractive I was when I was naked.
I think a lot of people do that.
A lot of people do it, and not a lot of people are comfortable with
I
it.
do that now.
And, well, you gotta own it, though.
Just saying.
Ownership of it is the first step. You admit that
But
you
I
have
hold weight
some-
a little differently
You
than
do.
you.
You are a very strong individual, and you have
I'm
way
just-
more muscle than I'll ever have.
Well,
in my
no, it's not
life.
even that. I'm just thick. Like I
You're wide. Your
just wide.
bone
I'm
structure
short
is
and
much
wide.
wider. But to further it, it was hiding all of that stuff. So it was going to the barber, spending a lot of money on a really nice haircut or beard trim, or I had a huge beard. I had a huge beard because I didn't want to know how many fucking chins I had. So I
Right.
don't know if I can.
go.
Are we cool? Okay,
That's all good.
You can fucking say whatever you want.
All right, I appreciate you. I was one of my biggest achievements, and everybody yelled at me because, oh my God, your beard, it's gone. One of my biggest achievements was, I think 3 months ago when I went to the barber and said, take it all off. I'm ready. I've lost enough weight. I was 194 pounds or 95, something like that. Take it off. I want to see my jawline again. I wanted to see what it looked like. I wanted to see what this looked like with a regular T-shirt on, because I was the king of wearing a shirt with a flannel over it so I could hide as much as possible,
Yep.
because that drapery
Yep.
covers the curves.
I know that.
So I wanted to take it all off. I didn't give a shit what anybody had to say about facial hair this or beard that.
Right.
I wanted to see what my face looked like because, to your point, old profile pictures, I saw what 18-year-old me looked like, 19-year-old me.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Well, I worked
That's what I'm thinking of. So I didn't go far enough back.
I worked at UPS
Yeah,
for 2.5
there you go.
years, throwing boxes,
That-
5 hours a
yeah.
day, and I was skinny.
I apologize. I thought that was
You're
early
good.
20s. That was
That
what
was
I was.
18 to 20 years old.
Okay.
And I
that's
wanted
what
to
I'm
get back to
seeing
that.
now.
Yes. I
There
wanted
you
to
go.
get
Okay.
back to
So
that.
in my mind, I didn't do enough research here that what age.
Or I did a
that
great
you were
job
at.
at hiding it.
I'm hoping Amazon does that to me.
It's entirely
Where I-
if they got you hauling boxes back and forth, I did something crazy like 1,800 parcels per 5
I'm
hours.
telling you what, I worked on the dock for like 2 nights in a row, and
It'll get you cut up.
Oh yeah,
It really will. And unfortunately, I've got literal scars from things that broke open and cut into my skin because it was really laborious.
Yeah.
And I did not love that aspect of it, but I got to say I could eat as many calories as I wanted. And part of my thing right now for weight loss, I love food, but man, I can't eat it anymore. Right now, and I've had a lot of people approach me in private, and I've encouraged people to reach out to me if they want to hear about anything that I've done, but I've never once, ever, told somebody else what they should do. Because it needs to make sense to yourself, and you need to be able to respect yourself while you do it. And truth be told, I don't entirely respect what I'm doing right now because medically speaking, biologically speaking, I'm not getting the nutrients that I should be getting at the expense of wanting to do something vain, which is be skinny.
Okay.
I'm getting 1,000 calories a day in one meal in a feeding window of 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. And that's not forever. That's not permanent.
That's a key point to get across there is that
it
this is part of your process.
And part of my process is going
Yours.
to my process is going to the doctor every 3 months, getting my blood drawn and making sure that all of my nutrients are in check. Because he told me straight up, your stretch marks are because of your eating habits and because you're not working out. You're taking in more calories than you're burning.
You lost weight faster than what is something that your skin can catch up to.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, also I was growing faster than it could catch up to.
Yeah.
And
I know that feeling.
And I got to say,
there's one time you actually said that to me, actually, when I went through that. You're like, oh, my God, you have stretch marks? This is before you lost your weight. And
it blew my mind.
I was like, yep.
Didn't understand it.
There you go. Now you do.
Well, and then I got to say, the calories help. I got to say, the best thing for me personally was getting rid of refined sugars. I hate to be the guy that carries on that witch hunt against sweets or whatever, but I don't like to do cheat days. I don't do that. And I've cheated on this diet since November 4 times or 5 times in my definition of cheating, which is any snack outside that window, anything that has a caloric value outside that window. Twice I had refined sugar.
Yeah.
And each of those 2 times, the next day, I felt like garbage. I felt sluggish. I couldn't move. I felt dirty. I felt like my body has now become not a finely tuned machine like, the 2...
don't look at me anymore. Don't look at me anymore.
The 2 gym goers next to me. But I immediately felt it. And I got to say that the sugar and the carbonated beverages getting cut out, I felt good. I had energy.
Body chemistry thing there.
Yeah.
What I admire about you, though, Eric, is the fact that, like, you have a strong mind behind you. And that's the thing. And that's the key, because I think when you go on a venture like this, you can't have a not sound mind to do something like that. I mean, to go from a normal caloric balance to a major, I think, in my mind, would be a caloric deficit.
So I looked it up. I'm supposed to be getting, to maintain my weight for my age, for my height, and for my activity level, my weight maintenance is 2,500 calories a day. My weight loss is 2,200 a day.
When you say weight maintenance, what
to
weight?
Stay stagnant, not gain, not lose.
No, what weight?
At the time,
Your current weight, or?
I don't think it's predicated on my weight. I think it's the BMI calculation that my doctor
Fuck
explained to me.
BMI, that's bullshit, yeah. I'm saying your current weight.
My current weight maintenance would be 2,500 calories a day. Weight loss would be 2,200. Extreme weight loss that you're not supposed to go beneath is 1,800 calories a day.
So, but what you just said was, so 2,500 to 2,200. So 300 calories was the difference.
These are people smarter than me that have come up with this calculation. I don't understand
I
where
know,
it
I'm
comes
just
from.
saying
That's
that,
what I was
though.
told. Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Well, then you introduce physical activity. Obviously, that caloric intake is
But
going
he
to
doesn't.
change as well.
Yes.
I'm
So-
saying that. So he's telling. So you're talking about facts where it's just like you're a desk guy.
I am absolutely a desk
So
guy.
you're a desk guy. So I mean, when you talk about that stuff,
During
and we're
business
not,
hours.
and again, we have said this over and over again that we're not experts. This is just pure conversation. But I mean, when it comes to that, it's the caloric intake to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
Any physical activity changes that number.
Well, that number was predicated on my sedentary lifestyle. The way
Okay.
that I sit and work at a desk in front of a computer was what dictated that particular number. That number changes drastically once you involve a single workout session for 60 minutes once a week.
There you go.
Like, it jumped up to like 3,200 calories to maintain.
Well, so diving into this self-image topic, what do you think about self-image, Steve? Like, to start this, I mean, Eric started it off, but what's your mindset when talking about self-image?
Yeah, when I look at Eric, I've known Eric for years, and that's one of the reasons that when we were talking about this, as a group and figuring out what should we talk about when it comes to Eric, and like I said, the surface level thing is absolutely the appearance. When you think about self-image, it's not. So when I look at self-image, obviously, and I'll introduce a few things to the conversation, is that when you look at self-image, it's not all internal. That's I think the immediate contradiction to the term is that when people think about self-image, they think about, oh, it's all internal. You got to do it internally. You got to do it all.
Self-worth, it's self-image.
No.
Yeah.
But a lot of the self-image side of it is not internal. These are all based on, in my opinion, I'm of the opinion that this is based on external factors. You take away external factors, how good you should look, how good you should feel, what you should get out of your day, all that stuff. You have positive and negative I guess, integration into your internal side of things as far as how your mind works. It's all a frame of reference, right? So at some point, yeah, internally you realize that you're not feeling as well as you used to. You know, I remember when I was 240-ish, and I had to sit a certain way to tie my shoes, where I used to not have to do that. And you justify that sometimes with the fact that, oh, I've gotten older. You know, I'm not 20 years old anymore. I'm in my late 20s. People tell me that things are. So it's like you have all these outside factors bringing in the actual self-image characterization of what you're actually going through. And that's, I think, with that, what I'll say is that I think that it takes time. So when your self-image, what we find is, or what I found is, personally, and I think that you guys might, and Eric especially, and Jake, you as well, is that people have this self-image that it's built up over the years. You grow up, you're in you go through adolescence, right? And everyone kind of sorts itself out in their teenage years, where it's like, oh, I got taller, I got bigger. We're talking about height and football player build, and
sure.
And I'm not a football player build, but I'm more this way, and so I just kind of you go with that. You almost go with the social norms that this is what I'm going to do, or you go against it. You know what? I'm skinny, so I'm going to start lifting. I'm going to start eating more. I'm going to do whatever it is. Then all of a sudden you hit your next stage, where all of a sudden you were in shape. I was naturally skinny. I graduated high school. I was 145 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I was naturally skinny. So people that see me now, and I'm not saying I'm the biggest guy on the block, but it's like people are like, so like, what position did you play when you were in high school? And I'm like, I was in choir. I had a deep voice, so I couldn't upset my mom all the time, so I went into choir. So, but when I started losing weight, or when I started gaining weight in my 20s, it was all these outside factors that were bringing things that I didn't realize as it was happening. And Eric, you might have gone through that as well, and Jake, you know what I'm talking about, I think, at that point, where there is a delay. Your self-image basically is on a major delay on the mirror and outside factors. It takes a while to register and this goes on both sides of it. It's not just, we're not just going to talk about weight tonight, but it's a real easy play when we're talking about that. It takes a while when you get, you're an athlete, and hey, I used to be able to slam dunk. I used to be able to bench this and all this stuff. And you look at them, and you're like, what can you bench now? Can you slam dunk now? And they're like, I can slam dunk. And you're like, okay, prove it. And you go to a rim, and you're like, yeah, I can't slam dunk anymore. There is a delay in your mind that you don't realize that when you look in the mirror, you are still seeing the person that is maybe 4 or 5 years back. And on the flip side of that, I know this, and Eric, you speak to this as well, is that now that you've lost the weight, you're still on a mission, because it's that age-old stereotype where it's like, I'm the fat kid. It's like, you're really lean right now, and you're skinny. You're like, when I look in the mirror, I still need to work on this. I need to work on this and all that stuff. And someone from the outside now is telling you, like, no, like, you have abs. You have lost a lot of weight. You say your jeans are falling off. You're like, no, I still need to do, because your self-image, your own self-image is on a delay. It takes a while for you to actually accept what you're dealing with, Eric, is that you don't, it's always on it's funny. It's on this delay where the fact that
something triggers it.
Your abilities, your actual looks to yourself, what you see in the mirror versus what other people see in the mirror. And then also, I mean, it's just, I'm not as young as I used to be. That stuff happens all the time.
I had something saved specifically for this moment. Actually, I was actually waiting for you to bring this up and frame it the way you did, because I wanted to share something that is not only specific to me, but it's actually specific to Jake. There was a part of what I did that had specifically to do with Jake Sanders. And
Wow, I feel honored.
No, for real. This was something I didn't bring up to you
Put
before.
the spotlight, if we can adjust that on Jake real quick.
I mean, I'm in the middle.
There's something. Remember when we hung out at my garage in my apartment, and we used to smoke cigars there all the time?
Yeah.
There was a moment that I cannot forget that was actually part of my turning point, specific to my weight loss.
I love this.
Specific for myself. And Jake, you were posting once or twice a day about major lifting accomplishments, and I thought that I was doing something intentionally stereotypical. And I don't know if you remember this or not. I specifically was like, "Yeah, you got all these muscles, but how's your flexibility?" And to throw it right in my face because you knew that your efforts in weight loss and strength gaining and
strength
exercise,
training. Yeah,
you didn't have that lack of flexibility that dumb people like me that knew nothing about it thought. So your immediate response to that was, "You think I'm not flexible?" And what you did immediately.
What was it?
He cocked his shoulders back and he lifted his arm up above his head and he pat himself on the back.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself later, that's something I physically couldn't do.
You tried, if I recall.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And the fact remains that I'll still remember Jake standing there in the entrance of my garage while we were smoking. He leans his arm back up. He pats himself on the back and says, "Can somebody who's not flexible do that?"
I like that.
And then
That's a powerful statement.
It was. It was a powerful statement from a powerful guy who was incredibly, incredibly determined to better himself and to be better every single day. And I thought on that for days and then for weeks, and I realized that
that was a while back before you started this.
Yes,
though.
it was.
That's like a year
I
prior.
thought about it, and I thought about it, and I realized that this shit's not going to happen. I have to make it happen.
Yeah.
Jake, win the day
Yeah.
was his handle. I think it still is.
It still is.
And it was this mentality of better.
Yeah.
Be better than yesterday.
Yep.
Be the best you can be today. Do something today that matters to yourself.
Yeah.
And I thought about that dumb motion you did just to throw it in my face. I thought to myself, that's not just a response to what I was saying. That's a statement of accomplishment.
Yeah.
I'm not the stereotypical meathead with a whole bunch of muscle and no real application. That's somebody who happens to have a lot of muscle that has perfected what he was trying to perfect. And I thought to myself, I need to take that mentality and I need to perfect something.
Yeah.
I need to pick a discipline and I need to fucking stick to it.
Well, and you saying that, I mean, that says a lot to me. And to be honest, like, I'm kind of blushing because it
You are a little red.
yeah, well, I'm always red. Anyways.
Whiskey.
Yeah.
You beat me to it, just barely, Eric.
Yeah. But so turn the tables a year and a half later.
Sure.
So now I'm looking back on myself saying this is what I've done and I've gained this much weight and saying this stuff and that. And it's like now I'm trying to get back to that place. So it's I honor you for saying that and thank you very much. But it's I was with self-image in the topic, I actually looked up like the definition, and it's like the idea one has of one's abilities, appearance, and personality.
I have that written down too.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, the personality is a big one that we're getting to.
It's
I love
huge,
it. Let's
and I think
dive
that
right in.
it's huge because, like, on your opening statement, Steve, like you talked about, like the internalization of the whole thing, but where it mostly starts, I think for people that most people's interests are is weight loss, right? Is the appearance of themselves in other people's eyes, or whether the most.
I think appearance in general, weight loss is an easy one, but you're absolutely right.
But the biggest,
I can speak on hair loss if you want to talk about that.
Oof.
yeah, but you've made that work.
Yeah, well,
You've made that work.
yeah, well,
I mean, bald heads and beards are in style, so you're good.
thank God.
You are the ideal hipster.
Oh my god!
But yeah, such a hipster. But go ahead, Jake. I mean, it's just there's other things other than weight loss, but it's an easy one to really go after.
It is.
It's
and
universal.
It's universal, but I think the most impactful thing when you're talking about the whole weight loss thing or someone's internalization of themselves is like you said, and what we've said is the stretch marks, like when you're gaining weight and stuff like that. And, and people, I don't think everyone does it because some people are just lucky like that, but the people that do gain weight and that they do that, it's definitely an impactful moment when you see yourself in the mirror and like, what the fuck is that? Like,
Yep.
when did that happen? And
Talking
it's
about
like
stretch marks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like that just didn't happen overnight. You're just now noticing it.
Or you're just now caring.
Or you're just now caring.
Which is even worse.
Yeah.
Because you're ignoring yourself.
Right. And so I think through this past year, as well as the audience knows, is that that's what I've discovered. And I think that, you know, it's funny. It's almost like a reciprocal thing, because after hearing Eric's story, it's like that me giving Eric motivation gives me motivation. So now, like that.
Can you do the thing?
What?
Can you pat your back?
I mean, I can still.
See, that blows my mind. It has nothing to do with fat or muscle or being slender.
But that's because I studied the fact. I mean, that's my degree.
You cared.
But I studied in the fact of movement and mobilization of the body.
Effective mobilization of the body.
Let's take what you're talking about, right? So take it beyond just the appearance, right? It's just that, because the body is meant for a lot of, like, physically, it's a functional piece, right? So, I mean, that's the weight loss, that's the physical activity and all that stuff. But you mentioned the personality part, and I was kind of holding off on that. And I like the fact that you introduced that, because it's not just personality, but one of the things I see knowing Eric Goldhaber is there was an outgoing, not personality necessarily, there is some, because you are also a private person. There's an outgoing self-confidence, and that's something that doesn't matter the weight or anything else. I mean, obviously, like physically and the chemistry in the body and everything like that you battle your own things that you go through. But you've actually brought to light to me over the years is that, and in my opinion, I think it's the way you were brought up. When I look at this, is that the body's meant for certain things, right? So when we're kids, we're younger. It's like, you know, it's you want to stay physically active. It's kind of trying everything out. As you get older, so Eric, last time he was on, we were talking about education, and we talked about the fact that, you know, he went to a technical school, that this is something that he had a strength in, was understanding not only computers, people, but like translating between the two of them. So that makes him very good at that. As you get through your life stages and everything like that, I mean, your body can be used for other things. It's not necessarily you got to be 40 years old at some point in your life that you spent 40 years where you have a six-pack and you are working out and you're eating right and all that stuff. You want to stay healthy, but the self-confidence that you have, Eric, over the years through this journey, and privately, I'm sure it went up and down just with your weight.
Absolutely.
But when you're out doing your job, when you're doing things, you use your body for what you were focused on and what you wanted to use your body as a tool. The biggest thing, though, is mentally and physically inside, is that it's not necessarily like that you want to have certain muscles or be able to do certain physical activities. That doesn't help you make a living.
Nope.
That's not the path that you necessarily chose. Now, if you want to supplement,
yeah, sure. Happiness.
you can do that because
Happiness
you have
is
interest in that.
to.
But that's where the personality comes in.
Yeah.
At a certain point, life can get in the way, and it's really easy to focus, I think, on physical fitness and all that stuff. But sometimes when you're going through things in life, that takes a back seat to the fact that you want to be mentally prepared and able to do what you want to do for a living, to provide for yourself, because it doesn't matter in the end game of like what you can actually bench, or, you know, the deadlift and all that stuff.
Even though that's all that mattered to me.
That's all that mattered to you at 18, at 20 years old. Yeah, absolutely. That was what you. But now things are being reintroduced, so now it's like you're back to the point. It's like, how is that going to get me money in the bank so that I can put food on the table and that I can buy a house, that I can, support myself? It doesn't matter.
But that's where the self-image comes into
Absolutely.
play. So
that's where I was going to.
Like, self-image takes out the outer aspects of life that we talk about all the time, I think. So, like, the self-image is just about you, which I think is great. And I wrote down a question, like, who thinking about self-image, who do you want to be, or who do you want yourself to be perceived as? And I think...
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish that statement, but you hit it.
Well, I think that my answer is both, because, and I know that that's a rickety road there, but
no,
a self-image aspect is contained of external influences and internal influences. Now, initially, your friends and your loved ones may say something about your weight loss or your personality or your attitude.
I wish you guys told me I was fat.
Well,
Can you scoot over?
Well, you said that you were fat. I didn't you said it to us. I didn't want to lay down the hammer and say, "No, you look like shit."
You know you know who did actually? You know who called me fat all the time, playfully but truthfully, was Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman was very comfortable calling me fat boy, and he said it with love. I love the kid to death.
He says that to everybody.
But he would like grab my stomach and fuck with me, and I loved him for it because he wasn't lying.
Yeah.
And not that you guys were. He didn't give a shit about what I was trying to hide. He wanted to be
But what
real.
you were saying, Jake, go ahead.
Sorry, but I think that how to combine the two of the perception of yourself and the perception of your external influences is that I think initially in my experience that even though that you don't want to adhere to it or even acknowledge the fact that someone is either saying that about your personality, whether you're angry or all the time, or you seem down all the time or something like that, you don't want to acknowledge that because you think that that's something wrong or bad. There's a negative connotation to it, but the fact is it's just reality. And I think that coherently dictates your internal response to the whole spectrum.
Oh, for
sure. When
it
comes to your self-image.
But I think you it's funny because the way you introduced that topic was all self. It was internal, and then you immediately went to the external, which is exactly a great point. I mean, that's
can you dissect that a little bit
Well,
more?
I mean, you're always you kind of start. If I heard it correctly, it was that you first start diving in internally, and that it's all about that. But then you talk about like family and friends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's all the external factors.
Yeah,
and that's what builds that self-image.
I think it's just it's a layer upon layer of prognosis that allows you to see the actual reality of it.
Yeah.
Because as humans, we try to digress from our own beliefs, and I think that.
Wait, how so?
So when our own reality, when we don't want to believe something, we instantly turn that off.
Yep.
We try to negate that at all costs.
I can't see it. It's not real.
Yeah.
Yep.
Stubborn.
So
Yep.
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
stubborn, and I think that we're all victims to that.
Oh, for sure.
And it's our choice to deal with that. And my next point is that like self-image be created through one's own thoughts or through others' perceptions of you?
Both. I think you hit it on the head. I think
Yeah.
it's a combination of that. I mean, you hit it exactly on the head. Is that all of the internal and external factors? I can't tell you what comes first because I mean, you think about it. When you're a kid, you're 5 years old. You're 6. Dustin, how old is Candace? You want to use that beautiful microphone?
She's 5.
She's 5. Now tell me.
I love this shit.
I know. So tell me.
This is what I've been missing.
Right.
So the three of us on the panel here, we don't have any kids, but talk to me about this to see if I'm going down the right path here. So you have a 5-year-old stepdaughter, basically, right? You know what I mean?
5-year-old daughter.
Daughter. Okay.
Thank you.
Didn't mean it's. All right. So you have a 5-year-old in the house. What is her self-image? Is it based on weight? Is it based on necessarily how she looks? Other than the fact, like maybe what clothes she might wear, but how much is that dictated necessarily by outside factors? At 5, you say a lot, very little,
to none,
little
At
to
least
none.
as of right now. I mean, yesterday was her first day of kindergarten.
There you go. Now you're introducing her.
Not saying that that's going to affect it right away.
Did
but
you embarrass her at the bus stop?
obviously it could down the road.
Right.
I did not.
Damn it.
I was at work, unfortunately. Kathy dropped her off and FaceTimed me when they're in the parking lot, so I got to at least
I'd be
tell her.
jumping up and down.
Happy. Hope she had a great day.
It's awesome.
Took
Man.
lots of pictures. But as of right now, I don't think it really affects it at all.
Right.
She fights the clothes sometimes, but she has her favorites.
So
still.
what do you think is going to happen over the next, say, 5 years, 5 to 10 years old? How much more? And I'm not necessarily. I mean, these are obviously pointed questions for what I'm thinking in my mind. But I mean, what do you think is going to change from internal only? You know what I mean? Like the inherent qualities of what her self-image is based on the love and caring that you and Kath do in the house. Now you introduce all these outside factors, other kids, what other kids are wearing, how other kids look, all these factors. Like, I mean, do you see that changing naturally, or do you not see that changing, and she's going to make it through her 10-year-old birthday and just not ever say anything about it and just be completely self-reliant on her image?
So I think it's a double-edged sword.
Okay.
I think there could be some outlying variables that play into it. But one thing that I've noticed with her, and Kathy has noticed a lot with her, she is very independent. She's very outspoken. She is a lot of, we've noticed it a lot where she'll walk up to someone, hey, do you want to play? And they say no. She turns around, all right, whatever.
She
goes and does her own thing.
I love that confidence.
Yeah, that's huge.
She's very independent. And
it's a child's confidence. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of my point here.
And she's really taken to that a lot, and I'm very proud of her for that. I see her being a leader, down the road very much, and just the personality that she has at such a young age.
And I hope to revisit that.
Kath is, though.
Yeah, Kath is as well.
That's her resemblance.
But she's gone through her. I mean, we've talked about it. I mean, we all have. I mean, you go through your ups and downs on your confidence. Your self-confidence goes up and down over the years based on your experiences. And I think that's the point I'm asking you. I mean, this is a prime example of before you have all these just overbearing outside factors that you're going to have. These are new things introduced. That's the point I'm saying with you, Jake, is what you're talking about is that it's a combination. So at 5 years old, your outside factor, your external factors, what other people think of your, we're talking about self-image, if you will, it's minimal. Now, at a certain point, and you go through adolescence, when at 10 years old, you're not quite there yet, but you're getting there.
Well, that's your philosophy background, though, Steve. Like, that adolescence is like the most
sociology,
impactful,
and that's what I'm saying.
That's the most impactful stage of our lives.
It's a huge curveball that, as an infant to the internal side of it, your only real factors at 5 years old for the first 5 years of your life, a lot of time, is yes, you have some social interactions, but you do have that it's just the household. Yeah. So and she's been through her ups and downs even in 5 years, but she's been surrounded with love and all this stuff. That love is still there necessarily, but the waking hours, that ratio changes as far as the surrounded by parents that love a 5-year-old versus a 10-year-old that a lot of the waking hours at this point is hobbies starting to be developed, as far as like playing sports or groups that you get involved with, school. All of a sudden, think about it now, your waking hours, I mean, you spend it at work as adults. Mm-hmm. So your outside factors are completely or are dominating your time. You are completely surrounded by people most of the time. And now with social media, it's never ending unless you unplug.
So there was something, if we can go down the psychology road for a minute, there's something I wanted to add to this particular discussion. I've been thinking about it all day, and there's a part of psychology referred to as transactional analysis. Dr. Eric Byrne wrote a book back in the 50s called Games People Play, where he looked at how human beings interacted with other human beings. Steve, I don't know if you read it in college. It was one of the major texts that my mom had to read when she was
I was a Soc major, but I did take some philosophy courses.
So Dr. Eric Byrne, he did a couple things, but the one that I wanted to bring up the most was he built on Freud, and he said that every human being has 3 different mindsets.
Freud was a twisted mind.
He was twisted. Dr. Eric Byrne was not. Dr. Eric Byrne had these 3 categories. You had your child, your parent, and your adult. So the child was the thing inside of you that dictated what you actually wanted, how you felt. Not necessarily the most logical thing. It was your passion. It was your emotion. It was the energy that got you out of bed every day. And then
the core.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the innate core, basically, at that point.
And then the parent, much to what Dustin was just talking about, is how you were raised. It speaks entirely to what was exhibited to you in your formative years. My personal parent was my father, Jason, and my mother, Cynthia. My mom had a master's degree in adolescent behavioral guidance. She was a high school She was my high school principal. And then my father, Jason, he was...
That's not escaping your core.
Not at all.
Family.
Not at all. And then my father, Jason, he had an accounting degree, and he was an accountant for only 4 years, hated it, hated the boringness of it, and he opened up his own motorcycle repair shop. And he started his own business, and he ran it for 13 years.
What a swing.
Yeah, it was a huge swing, but he understood.
But I do like the personality side of that, is that you're working with numbers, and now you're working with machines.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And we
but
both
you have customers on both sides.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He had to learn how to play the bureaucratic game. Then he had to learn how to play the customer sales game. And then we have what's called the adult. And the adult is something that a lot of people overlook when it comes to how we look at life. The adult is the thing inside of each person that we weren't shown, that we don't feel, but that we know to be what's supposed to be done. So But
is that learned through the two?
It is not learned. It is not learned. That's the thing.
So how are we supposed to know what that is?
You don't. That's the worst part about it.
So it's a double-edged sword.
When it comes to human psychology, Dr. Eric Burns suggested that the adult is the thing inside of each human being that we know to be right, whether or not we've been told how to do it or whether or not we feel it should be done. It's the thing that we
perceive to be right.
We perceive to be right rather than we feel to be right. Internally, I want to make a lot of money and play with guns and technology, but at the end of the day, I know that the most responsible thing to do is to provide for my friends, my family, my loved ones, the generation after me, my society around me, whereas my parent says, be mature, be responsible, try to just do good, be a good human being, be respectful.
You can do both, though.
You can do both.
But you're saying...
But my parent, I got lucky. I have parents that showed that thing. Not everybody has those parents.
But so you're saying that, like, let me maybe
go ahead.
See the example is like, so you're basically saying that this is where we start thinking for ourselves.
When it comes to the adult yes. When it comes to the adult, it says, what is that human being doing with his life? How is he interacting in society? What's he doing for a living? How can I be a part of the mesh that is everybody else and be productive, contribute, be morally upstanding in whatever my personal morals decided they
But it's
need
where
to
we
be.
start conceiving our own thoughts.
That's correct. And on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the fifth level is self-actualization, and that comes from a culmination of who you are as a human being, what you want to be when you grow up, what you think should be right from the adult, from what the rest of society suggests is right, and then from your parent. The type of thing that shows what has succeeded for other people. What have I been shown while I was growing up? What have I seen other people do? And maybe I haven't done myself, but I should try that. Like the simple things. When I bought a house, I learned that I can talk to my neighbors while I'm out of town. Hey guys, would you mind bringing my trash cans in from the street? These are things that adults that were raised well, that are functioning members of society, will go out of their way to be good human beings because they've reached that fifth level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs where they have self-actualization, self-respect, and a good self-image because they want to be a part of a productive and respectful society that cares.
Well, and I think so. Again, being a sociology major, like it was kind of the psychology. I thought we were talking about philosophy there, which is two different schools.
I feel like they all are intertwined.
They are a little
take a
intertwined.
couple like philosophy courses. It's debate.
Why
that's why Brandon Carson has been on here several times. And Jake, you talk about the way that he can argue either side.
You know what the weirdest class I ever took was?
What's that?
Was sports philosophy.
Yeah, philosophy is basically
sports philosophy.
Philosophy, yeah,
it's freaking weird.
No targeting.
All right, so what I wanted to say,
bullshit.
You take all of that part, and you take like from the sociology standpoint. For me, it's all those things that you're talking about is the socialization of an individual. And so, what I want to talk about here is where you're at now, right? So, Bobby Crow, who appreciated, he said we switched nights on him. And Bobby, if you follow our page on a regular basis, we tried to warn everyone. So hopefully, we'll continue to keep you guys informed. We'll hope to keep you informed, and we're glad to have you on, is what Jake meant to say.
Sure.
That's why your social circle is so important. You are who you're with. Always surround yourself with people that will make you better and how to strive for success. Now, as a child, going back to Candace, is that you don't have the ability to necessarily surround yourself with the people as you grow up. You're in school. You're surrounded by people that you're forced to be around. As you get older and older, yeah, you have your work friends, you have your neighbors, and hopefully you have good neighbors, because if you didn't have good neighbors, you're not going over them to ask them, hey, grab my neighbor. No, but if you didn't,
I got lucky.
You know what I mean? If you got an asshole neighbor, Chet from episodes back that we talked about, it's like you don't ask Chet to go get your mail. You don't want him to know that you're gone because you don't necessarily trust him.
Oh, Jesus.
But you try to surround yourself. That's the effort, I guess, for me on self-image, is that for anyone that is maybe struggling with it or is succeeding with it, look around you. I think it has a lot to do with the external factors that you were talking about, Jake, is that
I think it does too.
You surround yourself with people that you want to grow from. We've talked about that. That's the balance of it all. John Belly, we appreciate you being on too. He says, my opinion as a parent of a now 13-year-old child is a reflection of the parents and giving them the enough independence, and that's a good thing as long as they don't overstep and show respect, and I don't mind my son challenging my authority. So again, there's a balance there. It's not necessarily just
parent, man.
You're not just putting them through the doctrine of like, this is how you live, this is what you do, this is anything. You let them grow as a person. I think that's what you're talking about, Eric, is that you let them develop some habits. You keep them on the yellow brick road, you know what I mean? They're going to walk a little bit to the right, a little bit too far. You bat them back a little bit. No, don't.
No, I wholeheartedly
don't
agree.
do that, you know what I mean? But then it's like, all right, this is why. And it's like, if you want to do that, I'll push you over the little bit on the right as a parent maybe. And Dustin, you're learning this more and more with a 5-year-old. It's like, yeah, go ahead and touch that hot stove. Let's see how it goes.
But
so what'd you learn?
But that's such
I told you not to do it. And it's not about me being right. It's about the fact that it's like, this is why I'm trying to nurture you. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
That's the lesson learned. Not that I'm right, you're wrong, go ahead and touch that hot stove. It's I'm trying to tell you that from my experience, I know this is a bad thing for you because you're going to burn yourself. That's the lesson learned, is that it's a trust thing. And that's what happens with the people around you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Go ahead, Eric.
So, Steve, I know you were making a joke as soon as I said my mom was my principal, and I didn't have a whole lot of.
It wasn't a joke.
No.
It's the truth.
It is funny that people think that a principal mom is gonna keep me a nice, straight, narrow path. Do this, don't do that, etc. I had a very, very unique childhood, unlike anybody else's that I knew, and that was I asked my mom this several times over the course of several years. As an adult, I asked her, "Hey, why'd you do that thing you did?" And it was always, leave the house when you want. Go hang out with who you want. Do whatever you want. And I asked her, why'd you let me do that? Why'd you give me that much freedom? Why didn't you take all your years of counseling and experience and education, and why didn't you tell me this was this and this was that? And she said, well, first of all, you weren't going to listen to me. You were going to do your own thing. And as soon as I realized that you weren't going to go out there and hurt people or abuse drugs, I wanted you to become your own person. And I thought about that, and I thought about it. My mom letting me leave the house at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, under the age of 18, she only did it after she found out that I was actually going to use that to grow rather than to misbehave.
Yeah.
And that freedom defined who I am now. I realized I didn't need to go out and be a little shit.
But I think
I could just figure out who I was.
I think that's awesome, but I think that this is a slippery slope when we talk about the grand scheme of things, because we're diving down into it. I think that we're talking about, at least the way that I diagnose it is that depending on a parenting style, and again with the self-image thing, is I think your parents are a big portion of that self-image, but diving into it, I think that it is diagnosed through a lot of generations. Does that make sense?
Say it one more time, please.
I think diagnosing this whole thing about parenting and self-image, at least for me, is diagnosing it through generations. It's great-grandparents, how they raised your grandparents, how they raised your parents, how they raised you. Because, and we've talked about this, Steve, is that I think that with strong parents that are boisterous and that they care so much, that they don't, especially if it's parents that have gone through hardships, right? They want everything for their children, and they at that time they know best, which is fine. But what happens is, as a result, is that it's kind of like a coddling system where I just watched Couples Retreat.
Oh, God.
And
It's a great bad movie.
That's the best way to describe it, too.
It's such a great movie.
Yeah, I leave it on.
bad
There's a
movie.
lot of good scenery
But
and
I'm thinking,
bikinis and stuff.
I'm thinking with
it's fun.
what's his face off of Hangover that's in it, the Asian guy that's in. He's like the counselor. He's the relationship counselor.
Yes.
And he's talking about like if it's like the puppy syndrome, where if you love it so much, like you snap its neck.
Yeah.
So it's like if a parent wants so much for their child and that they want to coddle it and make sure that everything's segmented the right way and everything's done the right way, and they make sure that they're doing things the right way towards their lifestyle and towards what the parents believe is right, what happens is initially is that the kid doesn't know what to do when it comes time that they are on their own. And I think what happens is that even though that there's so much love there, that that adulting aspect that you were talking about, Eric,
Sure.
is substituted until that time comes where it's forced to come about, which meaning is so until they are completely on their own, which they are, which is normally nowadays for someone like me in their 20s. So
Right.
now late 20s sometimes. Yeah, our guest audience, Jake, he's from old school, great dude.
Peanut gallery.
But
Studio audience.
yeah, studio audience. That's what happens is mid 20s. You're just now trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by like I have dissected like what has happened in my family, to my knowledge,
Right.
through the generations, whether bad or good decisions, and that's what has led to who I am today.
Right.
And then what happens is you see the bad and you see the good, but what matters is when you get down on yourself with the self-image aspect, whether your friends say that you're down or you're angry or you have this perception of yourself that you're boulder backed and you're clenched over and you're not sleeping well and you see stretch marks and you're gaining weight. And I don't want to just talk about the bad stuff, but when you see those sort of things, at least for me, what I've learned is that when I'm thinking like that, you have to self-diagnose yourself and understand the circumstances. Understand what has came to you, understand what has made you who you are, and then you can make a decision on where you want to be with your self-image. What are the steps that I need to do to improve myself? Like what Eric said that I used to do, and I need to get back into that, is bettering myself every day, winning the day. And I think that, introducing another question, that, when learning about your own self-image, do you, like going back to it, like do you first look at your own perception of yourself or others? And like I said, it's really both, and it's the slippery slope of understanding and weeding out through the bullshit of whether or not this is the cards that I was dealt with, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. And what do I do with them? How do I want myself to be perceived as, and who do I really want to be?
Well, what I'll say is that the big part of the transition that you're talking about, and we talk about self-image and everything, we're talking about as you get older, and I was talking earlier about there's a delay there.
Yeah.
Is to your point about the fact you have, like, not everyone's got obviously the loving parents and the support system and all that stuff, and you're talking about having these parents that are basically like carrying you into your 20s, and now you're on your own, and now there's a delay. Jake in the audience is saying, your late 20s. What I think might be missing sometimes, and you talk about, or we have talked about over the year and a half we've been doing this, is the different generations.
Yeah. And
you have the outside factors of the family. So the classic millennial negative stereotype is that they don't know what to do on their own. They don't know. It's not necessarily. It is part of the previous generation. But what I think what's missing is what we've already talked about is when you go out on your own.
Yeah.
You're not on your own. This is a chance where you bring in those out, because we've already basically, I think that everyone in the garage and maybe hopefully everyone out there is, as a child, you have that core, right? You have the core.
You have your own ideas.
You develop
you
your own
mean?
ideas.
Sorry.
No, you have your core of, like, at 5 years old, all you know is your family unit. Good or bad,
Yes.
supportive, or I hate you because you ruined my life as I had you as a kid, and now I'm not a person anymore. I mean, like, these are the two sides of it and everything in between. When you get to that point, and to your point, Jake, is when you hit those 20s, there is an action there for me. If you want to improve your self-image, or if you want to develop your own self-image to a positive thing that drives you on a daily basis, continue to. That point that we talked about is surrounding yourself. Seek those people out. You don't necessarily have to keep leaning on your parents. That's the easy way to do it. That's moving back in your parents' basement, and they're still paying for my car. They're still paying for my cell phone bill. They're still paying my insurance. So you're not an adult yet, because you're not allowing yourself to be an adult. It's not rebelling. It's surround yourself with people that will continue to feed what you were raised on.
It's just molding yourself.
Well, it's an action of seeking that out. Is finding that core around you, because you're an adult now. You're not living in your parents' house, so now people are out there in the world, and this happens. Shit, when I was divorced, it was the same thing. Now I'm back, 30 years old. I'm on my own again. What the fuck happened? I thought I was doing everything right, and I had a support system. I had my family. Everything was going according to plan.
And your wife.
And my wife, and now all of a sudden, life has taken another hit in the fork in the road, and it went left when I thought it was supposed to go right.
Yep.
And so now you continue to, there is a constant action with this for me. It's not necessarily I wake up and I drive myself and do all that stuff. Eric, you were talking about the focus thing. One of the biggest things that I did with the focus thing for me was not necessarily just internally. It was an accountability, and I started doing it on check-ins on Facebook, which at first I got slack for. But for me, that was, I am not necessarily trying to, inspire other people. There was a little nice offshoot of that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was, now I'm putting myself out there.
Personal accountability.
So that there's accountability on myself by saying, okay, no one's really helping me out. No one's in bed with me waking up every day. There's not everyone, my mom's not downstairs when I'm waking up and I walk downstairs and, hey, I'm on my own.
I have a question about that.
I seek that out. I did. I seeked it out. And that's the thing, is that for me, it's combining the two factors you're talking about, internal and external. But if you don't have those external ones, I feel like I got lost, and I feel like people can get lost, is that all you do is seek internally, and now all of a sudden it's me versus the world. Knock that shit out. That's not how you were. Hopefully, that's not how you were raised. And if you were raised that way, it's still the same advice, in my opinion, for what it's worth. Is seek that core group around you and surround yourself by people that are driven, positive, and when you look at yourself, now all of a sudden you are accountable, because when you talk to those people and you're still on that point where you may not have a high self-image or self-confidence, they're the ones looking at you, and you want to actually prove to yourself that you can now prove to them that, no, I'm listening, I'm doing things right, I'm growing, and I'm developing my self-image to the way that I think that I appreciate your opinion of me, so that now I appreciate my opinion of me. And that's everything that we're talking about, is that not only your weight, your self-image as far as your physical side of it, but how are you eating? How are you exercising? Now all of a sudden, how are you sleeping? What are you doing with your free time? What are you doing with your professional career? What are you doing when you wake up to the time you go to bed? And are you proud of it? And more importantly, for me, when I was recentering myself and rebalancing myself, when the big turning point for me was, everything came after I opened myself up to external factors again that I used to have, but because life happened the way it did, I lost that based on my actions.
See, that's interesting, though, because I'm kind of like the opposite right now. But what did you want to say, Eric?
Steve, I want to ask about what you were just saying. When it came to, you had your whole support system, you had your wife, you had your whole situation. You said it fell apart on you, and you had a fork in the road, and you had to rechange.
It didn't just fall apart on me. That was part of my actions too, by the way.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But take yourself back. I want to put yourself in the mindset of Steve Crane. I believe it was right around when I first met you, actually, when you realized that it was time to change what was going on, to start hitting the gym. when focus first became a thing for you.
Right.
This is a genuine question. I'm not trying to make a point. I'm really curious, actually.
But the more important question is why.
Well,
Why was that?
So that's part of the question. Is
why was the gym the answer?
well, that's what I wanted to know. And I know that Big Rob was a big part of your life as well. And you saw a lot of his working out habits and his exercise, and he accomplished so much.
This was before that, actually.
It was a lot before that. I know you guys go way back.
I saw his downslide.
All right. So my question is for Stephen Crane, when you decided it was time to change, relative to this discussion, did you have a support group? Did it change from what you had before? And if so, what did it become? I know it wasn't just 100% Steve Crane solo by yourself.
No, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
What did you have when everything changed? What was the new thing? What was the new support? What was the new?
What was the deciding factor?
Yeah. Where did it? What was the fork in the road? And how did you find the support necessary to achieve what you? And let's be honest, you've achieved so incredibly much since I first met
It's
you.
all relative, yeah.
Well, relative to who you were, hell yeah.
So yeah, for me it was, and that's where I think the value of this podcast is for me, and talking about the life topics, is that it doesn't necessarily have to get to that point. For me, it is, I went through my 20s and going down the checklist, and it wasn't necessarily always my checklist, but it was what I thought was right, and so there was a sense of loss of ownership of my life. So we've talked about it before. You go through the 20s. I graduated college, and because that's what you do after high school is you go to college and you accomplish that. Then you get the job that I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I continued on that road. Through my 20s, I started developing my another personality. It was my adult self, and I was surrounded by good people, and didn't know what to do with that.
All right, details though. Who are those good people? What kind of
We're on a
positive
time
examples did you
constraint,
have?
So what I'll say is that there was a level of on my own versus support system, but my support system was you're on your own type thing. So for me, it wasn't. I would not consider my life necessarily rock bottom, but for me, it got to the rock bottom. I was going through. I didn't know how to be married, and this is not about negative things. It was more just I was not. I lost my identity.
Yeah.
And so my, if you will, bottom is that I was going through the motions, and that's where I got lost. And so when I went through the marriage counseling, I went through the divorce, then followed by, again, still being lost. I, after 12 years, got let go from a job that I didn't really want to be at, but I was still there for the paycheck, and that's what you're supposed to do. And that's really the turning point, was all bets are off, and life has now changed whether you like it or not. And that's where I hit a reset. And so I was surrounded through all the marital problems. The cigar shop. I started surrounding myself with people that were supportive, that weren't just in my life already.
Did you have to remove anyone to achieve that?
No, they remove themselves through attrition.
Really?
In my opinion.
People saw your strength.
There is an aspect that you may have to remove someone because the negativity is too overbearing, and that's the toughest part. That's where I went through that part of it, that I lost myself, is because I didn't make those active choices with my job, with everything else. It's just things just started happening.
Did they start happening by comparison to the couple previous years, and you thought, man, I really wish I would have spent these years doing XYZ, or did it make sense in the moment? Was it like,
no, it didn't make, it'll make sense hindsight usually.
Well, so hold on one second, Dustin.
So we can kind of roll into the closing remarks if you guys would like, but
absolutely.
I had a topic / word that came into mind with everything on the topic of self-image, but how much, and you guys can touch on it in your closing remarks if you'd like, but how much did self-discipline play into, whether it be your physical appearance or your personality or your own version of your self-image?
Okay. Well, starting the closing remarks, I'll let Eric go.
Yeah, Eric, go ahead, yeah.
And then we'll kind of go down the line here.
I think that discipline's a great word. And the unfortunate truth is...
You're good at it.
Pain, sacrifice. You have to own the negativity. There's nothing fun about not liking what you look like. There's nothing enjoyable about having poor self-image. There's nothing that you can do and wake up in the morning and just flip a switch and start respecting yourself. So once you acknowledge that there is something wrong, that discipline fuels everything. Once you know that there's a wrong that can be righted, that there's a bad that can be good, once you realize that there is something on the other side of that door, that discipline reminds you of where you were and where you're going. And when it comes to self-image, yeah, sure, it's predicated entirely by the self, but that predication's a result of what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're committing to. And if you're committing to nothing, you can't say, man, I really dropped the ball yesterday. I can't say that my success today was because I did a good job today. I have to say that discipline from last November until today is why I have the happiness that I have now. And I think that self-image, how I feel about myself internally, sure, my body was a part of that, but I was able to use determination. I was able to use discipline. I was able to use, what I thought was important to become a stepping stone. What's tomorrow? What's a year from now? And without discipline, that's just a sentence.
Based on everything you said earlier in the podcast, that's what builds up to that statement, and that's what makes it so powerful. That statement alone is a bumper sticker, but everything you said so far fills that into at least a pamphlet. You know what I mean?
I'm going for brochure here.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not saying negatively, but I mean, like if you're listening to the whole episode, I mean that's what it leads up to.
But I still think that like when you're really, really struggling, I think that you still need to add and give yourself a pat on the back when there's small,
if you can,
when there's small gains.
Absolutely.
When there's small accomplishments. I mean, hell, like there could be somebody out there that, dealing with deep depression and just getting out of bed is an accomplishment. And I think that you need to acknowledge that with yourself.
Absolutely.
It's not about the whole, well, other people are doing this and I'm doing this. That's the problem. I think that's the key when we're talking about self-image is understanding in
relative to the self?
Yes. That's you took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
No, it's great. You said it a lot better than I could. But that's the key is understanding when to shut off the external factors.
Right.
When it's coming to self-image and your perception of yourself from others.
You're saying shut it off?
No, I'm saying knowing when to.
Right.
So when you're giving yourself a small accomplishment, mm-hmm. and you're giving yourself a pat on the back, no matter where you are in life, but then you start comparing yourself to other people or other friends that are accomplishing bigger things, because then you get back down on yourself, and then you start saying, "Well, they're doing this, and I'm just getting out of bed." You know what I mean?
It's not a measuring stick.
Yes, and I think that. I think discipline's a huge word, and I think that Eric's great at it. I think Steve's great at it. I think, to be completely honest, I think I've fell off of it, but I think I'm in that stage in life where I'm understanding the process, right?
And your process is relative to what you can personally justify.
Right, and it's the process of my life. It's not the process of Steve's. It's not the process of Eric's or anybody in the crowd or anybody in the audience for that matter. And anyone can have their opinions, but understanding when to shut that comparability off mm-hmm. between what other people are doing and what you're doing, and understanding the process of your own life is the key to your self-image. And I think that to answer Dustin's question, I think that I need to relearn the whole discipline aspect, because I'm like the classic example of going from all this discipline mm-hmm. to coming to the adult phase,
sure.
and just doing whatever the hell I want.
Well,
and like within the last 2 years of being graduated from college, it's like free for all, and the discipline has gone away because all my life being 24, that's all I've known is discipline.
It was fed to you through institutions.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which is fine,
and it's great.
Well, that's the external factors that you've now lost. Which is what we were talking about.
Right. And I think that regaining it and understanding that I have to make a choice to create the discipline myself.
Yeah.
I don't have an external factor saying, go do this, go do that, is a problem. But on playing devil's advocate, I'm also in the mix where it's like, don't tell me to do that because I'm my own person. So I'm trying to find that out as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, and I think I know Tyler's listening, and he was in one of our armed forces, which thank you for your service. But I think that even with that, he comes from a disciplined background, and he's the one that enjoys our podcast that is around my age, and I think even nowadays, especially, he's understanding. I think we're both on the same wavelength is what I'm saying. And I think that him and I don't get to talk a lot, but I think that he would understand this the most out of the group here in our audience, is that I think that in this time of understanding the adulting aspect, as people would call it, and having all this regimented lifestyle beforehand and then having all this freedom, it's a very steep road to try to get up. And I think as long as, like you said, Steve, like as long as we have good people in our lives and people that care compassionately and want to improve our lives and want to listen and know when we want to be heard and when we want them to be heard, I think that also too can be valued in a younger person's life. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay, so I think self-image is a very interesting topic, and I'm glad that Eric was on for this topic. I did want to say one thing before I left it off, and I do think throughout this whole topic tonight is that no matter what age you are, I think that the universe puts different aspects and different problems in our life for a reason. And I think that if we don't get it the first time, that it will put it into our lives again. It will show us that problem again to see how we react and if we react differently. So I think that if we have a problem in our life and we go about it a right way or a wrong way, if it's the wrong way, the universe will introduce it a second time to get it through our heads.
Interesting.
And I've had that happen within the last 5 years 2 or 3 times, and it definitely shows you. It definitely shows yourself in the mirror, and I think that you can truly learn from it.
Sure.
To better yourself. Steve?
That's a lot.
Lots to cover.
It's a lot, and I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. I'm just gonna kind of summarize real quick what I deem is important for the self-image thing, and we've hit it, we've gone away from it, we've come back to it, but you never can shut yourself off. The self-image thing, I think, a lot of times is based on when you close all external factors out, it's you versus the world. So to your point, Jake, and I'm not trying to open up the discussion again, but it's, you're your own person. That's absolutely true. But you're stronger with other people around you.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about like the football side of it, and or not just football, but the institutions, as Eric said, you're going through your growing years into your adulting life, as we've talked about. Don't make the outside factors disappear. Yeah, you're your own person. You don't stop growing at fucking 21 years old when I graduated college. That's the biggest mistake you can make. Shit's hitting the fan. Fuck everyone else. I'm done. I'm going to do it myself. you're not in this world by yourself. So the self-image is still being reflected on you from everyone else. And your self-reflection is based on outside factors, as we talked about tonight.
Yeah.
So don't reject it, embrace it, and build that on what you have internally. So being your own person is not you on an island. You will go insane on an island. If you've seen the Tom Hanks movie, you will go fucking insane if you are by yourself. Being
Castaway.
a sociology major, again, it's all based on what other people around you deem important, social norms, everything else. You are fitting into something that is not just yourself. So what I will say is that the balance for me is, and what I think might help people continue to succeed, and some people might have these traits already, and what I struggle with personally is setting goals for my own accountability. And that can be that whole waking up and getting out of bed. If you say you want to wake up at 4 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 10 a.m., I don't care what your schedule is. If you work nights, you're still going to, you're working nights right now. It's real easy that I have to be at, what time do you have to be at work, Jake?
6:30 p.m.
All right, so I'm going to wake up
Jesus.
like. So let's translate that, right?
Yeah.
So 6:30, I have to be at work at 9:45 ish. So there are times where I'll sleep in, and I'm going to sleep in until 8:15, so I can get up and go around. That's you waking up at 4:30 in the afternoon. What time do you wake up?
2.
Yeah, and
At the latest.
At the latest. What time do you set your alarm?
I don't.
Okay.
Oh, God.
So if you want to wake up at a certain time of the day,
Because
that's you waking up to your own accountability. It's not just those little steps you're talking about. Is that? But if you hit snooze, or you're like, you know what, fuck it, I don't need to go to the gym today. I'm just gonna sleep in, and there's no other reason. I got a good night's sleep, but I just don't want to go. That if you had that goal, if you didn't have that goal, then fucking sleep in. I don't care. But if you had that goal to do it, you've already struggled. You've already tumbled down a path that you might go further down.
Yeah.
That's the self-image. Do you hold yourself to the high standard you hold other people to? And do you value not only your opinion, but people that you hold important to you? Do you value their opinion enough that you are holding yourself accountable to not only you, but other people that you value's opinion of yourself? That's what should drive you, because that's your core. That's what, as you get into your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is, with kids, like we were talking about with Dustin, do you hold yourself to the same standard that you hold your kids? It's not just about an example. It's about the fact that you need to, if you value that person in your life, don't value them necessarily more or less. Yeah, you take a bullet for them, but at the same time, you have to be there to take a bullet for them. So that's the self-image. That's the self-confidence. That's the self-concept of who you are. And that's where it comes into, yeah, you are your own person among billions of other people.
Yeah.
So that's the self-image, is where do you fit in? Where do you want to fit in? And how do you fit in the way that you want to fit in? And I know that's kind of like jumbled up, but it's like that's exactly it. Is that when you wake up in the morning, what time do you want to wake up? Fucking do it. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to gain weight? Do you want to eat better? Do you want to do better in your career? Do you want a different career? Set the goals, and that's where the self-image actually builds upon itself. And I struggle with it all the time. And putting myself out there on a podcast like this with you, Jake, and with our guests like Eric, is that when you put yourself out there, that's a form of me personally building my own self-image. Not because I want to talk in front of the camera. I don't necessarily like it. I'm getting used to it. But with the job, I do it all the time. And talking into a microphone, never used to like doing it. That's why I switched off of being a mass comm major, because I didn't know what, like, oh, you have a deep voice. Cool. No one wants to hear what I have to say. At this point, it's like I enjoy the conversations that I have based on what I have to say because of what they have to say back.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this, and that's where I get the self-image growth constantly, is that putting myself out there into the universe to get those second chances or whatever it is, the second trials and tests, is that I want to be consistent, and if I'm not happy with what I did before, that I will change it so that with the finite time we have on this earth, we'll figure it out. And I know that at least I can be happy, and if I'm not with my actions, I'm going to change it.
I like
so
that
my self-image, to me, based on not only my personal thoughts, but my personal thoughts are based on all the external factors. That's why I value that. That's the balance for me.
I like that. It's awesome, Steve.
Yeah.
Let's thank our sponsors.
Yes. Thank you, Altadis US of A. Thank you for providing the Monte Cristo Nicaraguan series tonight. I'm smoking it right now. It's a great, great medium body cigar. You can't really pick up the Alec Bradley this week.
Sorry.
At the Tinderbox.
No.
Can they do the Nicaraguan series? Are we able to do that, or what?
Yeah, we'll do 15% off. So I'm about to smoke the Monte Cristo Nicaragua series.
Yeah.
Blended by AJ Fernandez. Nowhere on the box is AJ Fernandez, but it is blended by him, like so many things these days.
Yes.
Thanks, AJ.
Well, that's great. So come to the Tinderbox at Easton to get those. Even call us, and
we'll ship it out.
Can we ship it out? How many do they have
Go to
to
the
get?
post office today between work and here.
How many do they have to get for us?
Do a 5-pack.
Do a 5-pack. So
Yeah.
get 5 Monte Cristo Nicaraguan series, 15% off, and we'll ship it out for you guys. Thank you, Altadis US of A. Thank you, Tinderbox at Easton, for your loving support. Thank you, Brian and Steve of the BS Cigar Company, for providing an amazing product, very unique flavors. It's awesome. And thank you, Eric Goldhaber.
You're welcome, buddy.
And Eric Black.
And Eric Black. Thank you guys for your gifts. Thank you, Eric Goldhaber, for being on tonight. This was an amazing podcast, and I'm so glad to be back.
We're happy to have you back.
Episode 81. I'm Jake.
I'm Steve.
I'm Eric.
Bourbon and BS
Hi, Dustin.
podcast.
And Nate.
Episode 81, Thirsty Thursdays.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.